This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1886. Our title sucks, but the episode's great. We'll yell at them as they come in.
Exactly. Parade them on air.
I mean, Shane texted me. He'll be here later, he said. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Do you have any thoughts on that AMC ticket price increase?
Oh my God. I was just bitching about that at dinner.
Yeah.
It just infuriates me. Yeah. Right. It's like, as far as I know, movies have always been the same. You pay a price, you get in, sit wherever you want, and if you want a good seat, get there early. If you don't care, get there late. Right? If now with online, same thing, you can buy them online and pick your seat, but you still have to pick them early if you want to get the seats that you want. Right? And it's that simple. But everything's the same. And now they're going to start being like, oh, the good seats. Well, those cost 50% more. And then, if you want to actually afford the movies, you can sit in the shitty front seats or whatever, know, and it's just like, and yeah, maybe the front seats will be cheaper. And maybe for some people, they'll be happy to pay less to sit in the front. And some people love the front. So like they're going to get a bonus, right? Because they'll save money. But first of all, like, are the cheapest seats going to cost less than they do now? Or are the cheapest seats going to cost the same as they do now? And is everything else going to be more expensive? I guarantee you, assuming a sold out theater, that they're going to make more money than they do today because half the tickets will cost more than they do now, right? But 10% of the tickets will cost less than they do now, right? Mm-hmm. So they're going to make more. And it's just one more reason for me to never go to the movies ever again. Like I'm done with it. Right.
Right. Right. Because people are going to buy the cheapest ones, aren't they? Like, even if they're in the front row, or like, where else would they be? Would the cheapest one be like the last row in the front row? And I think
a lot of people like the back row. I would expect that the middle and the very back will be the cheapest, the most expensive. Mm-hmm. Like the first two rows will be cheap because they suck. Except in a very few theaters where they actually put distance between the screen and the front row, right?
Right.
And then, and then maybe they'll have a few pockets of like slightly cheaper seats. Like, I don't know, to make it seem fair. Well, I'll go for the middle seats. Well, guess what? The middle price seats cost the same as they do today. So you're not actually like, but it'll be some psychological game, right? Like, I won't go for the cheapest ones. I'll go for the middle. Yeah, that's I don't know, the whole thing. And they're like, well, it's the same as going to a concert or the baseball stadium or whatever. It's like, yeah, but it's never been that way, right? And so like, why?
What's the most? How many seats are in like the IMAX? Is that the biggest stadium seating thing, or
no? Surprisingly, theater number 1 at the Why Missing 8 has one of the largest theaters around. That's 400 seats in that theater.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And most newer theaters only have around 250 because they don't sell out. Like, movies don't sell out like they used to, right? And so it makes sense for them to have more smaller theaters so they can have different times and different movies and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's a theater in Jersey, somewhere between here and Ocean City, that my buddy and I like went to a few times in the 90s, that had an even bigger theater than number 1 at Why Missing. But very few of them are that big.
Right.
Like, so
I was just thinking that comparison to a stadium, and is just ridiculous.
Yeah, with thousands and thousands, 80,000 seats or whatever at some stadium. Well, of course, something's going to cost more than other ones, right? If you want to see Billy Joel in the front, you're going to pay for it. But like, I'm not seeing anything in person, right? It's not live. I'm not like actually standing in front of Harrison Ford in the new Indiana Jones movie. You're just beaming it to my eyeballs. Like, come on, What am I paying extra for? It's
I know.
bullshit, you know?
I know. I saw the one movie that I saw from the front row, and it was only because we were late. You would never guess that it was this movie, right? It was Throw Mama from the Train, of all movies. Why was that one a packed house, right? And we're just sitting there going like this, and you're looking to the right, and then you're looking to the left.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay. So those people who want to just buy cheap seats, you're just going to ruin their necks for an entire movie theater generation, because they're like, I'm not paying anymore. I'm just sitting in the front. I don't care.
Well, those front seats are already agreed on because they shouldn't exist, right? There shouldn't be a seat that's so close that you can't actually see the screen, right?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. They should the first 2 to 3, 4 rows, just there shouldn't even be chairs there. So that's already them trying to nickel and dime it by charging prices. Now, if you want to say, hey, those 4 rows are $1 each, well, then fine. Let people go pay $1 and sit in the crappiest seats in the world, right? Like, fine. But, I'll be very curious to see what that heat map looks like of those seats and how much it costs. Like, and what is the most expensive ticket going to cost? Is it going to, like, if a ticket costs $10 to go see the movies, are those expensive ones going to cost 12, or are they going to cost 15, or are they going to cost 18, right? And now I'm going to pay 50% more or more than that to see the same movie? They're already too expensive. Like, forget it. And nowadays you wait 2 weeks and I can pay $20 to rent a movie that's in the theater at home.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to charge me $15 to sit in a good seat, that means I can't even buy 2 tickets for the price of watching it at home. Seal the deal.
Right.
As if I was already basically never going to go to the theater again. Now I'm definitely not, because the theater that we like to go to here is the AMC. That's the one that we go to in Springfield. It's got the reclining seats and the whole business and everything. And we used to be part of their club, whatever it was, Stubbs or something. And then every Tuesday it was $5 movies. So we would go like once a month or so. This was pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
To the movies, because it was 4 of us went as a family for his $20. We bought no popcorn. We bought no snacks. We just waltzed in there with our $5 seats. It was great. Now you're telling me I'm barely going to be able to buy 1 ticket for the price of what I used to take a family of 4 to. I'm done.
Right.
Spoilers be damned. I'm just not going.
Yeah. And I mean, you're paying the amount of money you pay for one movie visit is a month of a streaming service. Not even.
Yeah. Exactly.
more than a month. There's Adam.
Yep, here I am. Sound, video, and everything. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. And a backward Santa. Is he in timeout back there? What's going on?
This is not for his delicate eyes.
Well, I just heard. I mean, Kevin's not going to be able to make it tonight. I just got an email. So. And
Shane?
He'll be here shortly.
Okay.
Well, maybe in like a half hour or so. So it's our ugly mugs for the first run in the first part of it. We were talking about, Adam, do you have any thoughts on movie price increases for movie theaters? Have you heard about that?
I'd seen something about how AMC Theaters was planning on adjusting ticket prices based on seat location.
Yep.
Not in favor of it.
Have you been to the theater anytime recently?
I guess the last time I went to see a movie in the theater was back in November when Wakanda Forever was out.
Now, how many, like in terms of size, does AMC run the most movie theaters? Or where are they in the?
It's a good question. The landscape has changed so much because they've been shutting down so many theaters and stuff.
Yeah.
So let's see.
And it'll just be a trickle effect, right? Because then every other company will do the same thing, probably. Then,
if it works for AMC, if they make 20% more per show, everybody's going to do it.
Yeah.
AMC is number 1 in the United States, and then Cinemark, which maybe is that like a out west thing? Because I've never seen a Cinemark. I don't know where that's from. And actually, AMC is the largest in the world.
Ooh.
According to Wikipedia.
There you go. So all the other companies should lower their price tickets and just increase their concession prices, and then they'll make out. It'll be competition.
I know, right? Can you imagine if concessions went up even more?
Oh my God. Wow. I think the last movie I saw was probably Endgame.
That long? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might have been that last. Because when was the last Star Wars movie? It's been a while now.
Oh, sure.
I don't even know if I saw that Avengers movie in the theater.
I saw it in the IMAX with about 18 other people in the huge King of Prussia IMAX, because we went on a late showing, my ex and I, because actually our third date was the first Avengers movie. So then we were like, somebody said that they were at the IMAX to see Avengers Endgame. There was like 2 people because they went on like at midnight or something like that. So we were like, let's pick we went like on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, late at night. I was like, yeah, I'll drive home. I don't care. And we sat there with, 15, 16, 18 other people, watched this movie for 3 hours and then, go home,
Yeah, weeknights are not usually very busy. Well, that's why AMC used to do the $5 Tuesdays to get people to come to the theaters so that they could sell all the popcorn, right? Like, and it would be pretty busy. Like I said, that's the only time I haven't paid full price for a theater ticket in a long time. But it would be busy on Tuesday because everybody was there for a $5 night, right? Like it's that's like a reasonable price. Again, family of 4, $20 a night at the movies. Okay. That feels like a fair price to me. I mean, I'm still living like it's 1992, when matinees were $5 or whatever. Right. I don't know. Nowadays it's like, I can sit at home and rent it for $20, or I could buy it for $30. So if it's a movie that you even think you're going to want to watch twice, you just pay $30 and now you own it like the same time it's in the theater. Like, I mean, that's like, I was saying to the kids tonight at dinner, like the only movie that's coming out this year that I feel like I would want to watch as soon as possible because of spoilers is the Indiana Jones movie. Right. Even the Marvel movies now, like I'm not worried about spoilers so much anymore. Like I don't feel like anything that's happening is so like incredibly suspenseful that I would feel ruined. I'll still try to avoid spoilers. I won't watch the previews or anything, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But because it's going to come to Disney Plus and I'm paying for that. And so I don't want to pay twice. So like, it's almost like Disney is saying, please don't go to the movies. Just wait for it on Disney Plus because, like that's how that's the conversation my brain has with itself. Like, I don't want to pay twice. So, skip it. And even though Indiana Jones, like, even though that's part of Disney, I don't know if it'll come to Disney Plus right away. And I don't want it to be spoiled. Like, I really want to see that movie. So that one I would probably definitely rent for 20, might buy for 30 just so I could watch it twice before it comes to Disney Plus. I don't know. I'll wait, to see. But
yeah, and I don't know if nowadays I think about, am I really getting surprised by the mainstream movies? Not these, not side movies that aren't part of a franchise, like for instance, The Menu. I watched The Menu the other day.
I haven't seen that yet. I can't wait though.
Not that I would want to be spoiled, but that one is different. Like, you kind of want to go in and you want to enjoy the movie as it lays itself out, because you don't think there's going to be Menu 2 The Revenge, right? Like, it's not going to be anything like that. So, I want to go in there fresh. I don't watch a lot of trailers. I certainly don't try to read about things, all the behind the scenes, let me go watch 10 YouTube videos on the making of a movie that hasn't come out yet. I'm not going to do that. But what are the big spoilers in these movies? Like with Marvel, like did you see Wakanda Forever, Brian?
I did now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there was one part in that whole thing that I felt was like a surprise. One moment that was a surprise. Everything else, though, I think the blanket term of spoiler gets used too much because like I was thinking as I was watching, I was like, there's nothing in here that would affect the movie had I known about it previously, except for one moment where one character dies, right? That everything else I was like, so with a lot of these bigger franchise things, now Indiana Jones is different because we haven't had an Indiana Jones in a long time. And who knows what they're going to do because Harrison Ford is really old, right? So it's like, you know, who knows what's going to happen with that. Whereas the Star Wars things is kind of different, you know, the franchise is going to live forever, blah, 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 blah. You know, we've seen so many other versions of it. So I don't know if you guys feel about that. But even like one of the last time we recorded on Twitter, I just put out a thing that if anybody wanted to ask us questions, like, you know, we're recording now. You know, of course, Twitter sucks nowadays. So it's like only a few people saw it.
Nowadays?
Yeah. And only like a few people got, you know, but one of let me see, who was it? They asked us, it was Daryl Patterson in DC, who's been listening to CGS for a long time. He's like, I want to know your thoughts on House of Dragon. And like, that was another one, like, unlike Game of Thrones, watching House of Dragon to me was like, you could have told me everything about it and I could care less beforehand.
Tasha and I have still only watched 5 of the episodes because we're just like, we don't even care. None of the characters have our loyalty. None of the plot lines are so overwhelming that we can't wait to find out what happens next. It's like, whatever. Maybe we'll watch it. Maybe we won't someday. But we have so many other shows that are more interesting that we're just never choosing it. It sits there going, next episode, do you want to watch it? And we're like, we'll watch we'll watch Wednesday instead. That's way cooler, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the problem for me any scene in any movie that I haven't seen is a spoiler in the sense that, like, my brain will obsess over it, and then the whole movie I'm like waiting, like, when does the bridge explode? Like, or when does that person get shot? Or when does that, you know, like, and then so like I'm expecting it the whole time, and then I'm distracted from what's actually happening because I'm thinking about what that thing is that I saw that's going to happen at some point in this movie. And so it just sort of ruins the experience for me because I'm not going in blind, right? So that's when I like liberally use the word spoiler. It's not just about the end of Empire Strikes Back. It's like everything. You know, he ordered a hot dog at the cart. Oh, that's a spoiler because now I'm going to be wondering every time he walks down the street when he's going to stop and order the hot dog. You know, like, it's so stupid, but my brain works that way. You know, it has nothing to do with the plot or anything, and it just So.
Yeah, House of Dragon was tricky because it was like you wanted it to be good. It got caught up too much in just sort of one family and even though they had different locations and technically they were different, it just felt too centralized as opposed to a huge ensemble spread out across this whole world. And the time jumps didn't help because you have these, you know, here's your first set of actors, then we time jump. Okay. Time jump, and then only these people change. Then you time jump again. Okay, now the other people change, and then they time jump. Nobody changes. Maybe the kids change, you know. And you're just like, I don't even know who's who anymore. I can't tell which kids are which because it was too much of a slow burn. Everybody was like, yeah, it's a slow burn. So you get to that last episode, and I was like, oh my god, the last episode, I'm done already. You know, by that point. Not when, you know, the original Game of Thrones, every episode was a movie unto itself.
Yeah.
And this just feels like a generic soap opera, you know, just a run-of-the-mill TV show. It's Game of Thrones 2, and it feels like that, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
And it won the Golden Globe.
Did it really?
Yes, for best drama or whatever. Over, like, people said, like, over the last season of Better Call Saul and Ozark and some other thing, I guess. I don't know.
Ozark is so good.
Yeah.
That show is so good.
Adam, what are your thoughts about that? About spoilers, and what do you think? Do you think media today is using them well or anything like that?
Using them well?
Or does current media or like the way we react? Like, I just think it's like, some of the biggest examples of it is like, oh my God, this character showed up in the next Marvel movie or whatever. And they show for like 5 minutes, and we already knew about it because they hired the person, 3 months down the road, and people knew about it, but yet still were, I don't know.
Well, that's just cross promotion. And then, a cameo in one Marvel project that's a commercial for a future Marvel project, and then there's extra textual commercials for that in-text commercial. That's spoilers as synergy, I guess you could call that. But spoilers as a whole don't. I guess I'm kind of semi-apathetic towards them. It's kind of like what Bryan said about his viewing practices. I don't care about them too much, but I do try to avoid them where possible.
Especially as someone who's, who purposely is behind in their reading too, I'm sure that plays a part.
Yeah, spoilers are kind of a constant part of my life. Yeah. Because I just read a comic from mid-2006 this afternoon. It was a Busiek and Pete Woods Action Comics story from mid-2006. But of course, that's like 3 iterations of continuity ago, so
yeah, right.
Nobody's going to be spoiling that for me nowadays anyway.
Nobody even remembers it anymore.
Yeah. Do we want to talk? Go ahead.
Oh, I want to have a little exciting news.
Do tell.
So Clara got her first job, and she is working at Showcase Comics.
Oh, nice.
Her first shift is tomorrow. How cool is that?
What is she going to be doing?
Whatever, stocking shelves, organizing magic card, like whatever, right? Like it's just, but this is how cool is this is like the nice insular world of the nerd, right? So 2 weeks ago we were at an SCA event, right, where we were all dressed in our garb, and we were at an event called Tavern, where we're literally in this room that looks like a tavern, and we're drinking beer and people are playing games and there's bards doing things and we're talking and people are crafting, and it's just like a hangout day and having fun. And a guy walks in, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure that's the guy who runs the other Showcase Comics. And I'm like, and I think he's the owner of both of them. So he was walking by our table, and I stopped him, like, you're the Showcase Comics guy, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm Mike. And he was there with his teenage daughter. And so we were talking for a while, and I said, and Clara was there with us. And I'm like, my daughter is 16 and she's looking for her first job, and her first choice is working at Showcase. He's like, well, go, because I told him, we live in Ardmore. He's like, go over, tell Chris, and, fill out an application. And if they've got a shift, I'm sure it'll be no problem. So we went over, did exactly that. And now she starts Tuesday. It's like amazing.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. She's qualified, right? She's read a lot of comics. She knows D&D inside and out. She plays Magic. She knows all these Euro board games because we have like 100 of them. And, she'll be in her element, right? And it's so cool.
Subjecting her to the world of comics retail, like father, like daughter.
Yeah,
daughter, like father.
Exactly. It's pretty cool. I'm very excited.
How old were you when you started working at Golden Eagle?
Well, I was 17 because I started senior year because, Jamie and I worked at the frozen yogurt place, and then they started, the fad wore off, and then they started not selling as much. So then they started laying off and Jamie was like a manager. So they laid him off because the actual guy who owned the franchise started working because that was the only way he could afford to keep it open. Right. So he basically fired all the managers, laid them all off. And then Jamie got the job at Golden Eagle. And then a few months later they had an opening, and then he recommended me, which was good because by that point my job was over at TCBY. And so, yeah.
Very cool.
So
very cool.
So I'm stoked.
Now she can get discounts on comics. You're gonna start buying print again.
Shut up! No. So I don't need that in my life.
You gotta go get a pull list now.
She can spend her money on comics if she wants to, that she earns at the comic book store. I'm not.
Does she want to? Do you think?
I mean, she likes to read comics. And I think when she's surrounded by them, she will read more comics, right? Like she will get sucked into that vortex and read a lot of comics. But, she's logged in on the computer with my Marvel and DC account, so she can read whatever she wants. And, maybe there'll be issues floating around. I don't know how that store works and what the employee think. Maybe they pass around issues. Maybe they're allowed to read on their shifts. Like, I don't know, right? Like, it's like sometimes Lem would tell me, hey, I don't have anything for you to do tonight. So when there's no customers, just read something you don't normally read so that you're just like aware of it. So I would, that would be some shifts. So they could do the same thing. I have no idea. So she'll find out tomorrow, I guess.
Well, if she gets that opportunity to read while on the clock, maybe the temptation won't be so great to bring home print comics, and she can put that money to other things.
Yeah,
exactly.
They sell gaming supplies too, I assume.
Oh yeah, yeah. She'll be spending all her money on D&D books and stuff, I'm sure.
and all the accessories, right? Where she starts to see like all the additional stuff that comes with it, like let me get this special, I don't know, die or figure, I don't know, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do we want to talk Black Panther? Because I know Shane, you and Shane did an episode, right, already?
Oh yeah. And Chris Chris actually came in from Jersey, and we all went out to the Why Missing 8 to see the thing together, and then we went directly to the studio and recorded a review episode.
Yeah, that way if he misses some of this conversation, it won't be so.
Yep, his opinions are on record.
Yeah. What'd you think? Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
So I've been thinking about this. It was like a real movie, right? Like a real character movie, right? Like it was deep, like in the way that most other Marvel movies weren't, right? Like, it felt, there were times when I was like surprised, not at the action or not at what happened, but like more about like how the characters were talking to each other and that kind of stuff. Because it was actually like kind of light on the whole superhero thing. Like there wasn't a ton of action and stuff. It was mostly people talking.
Right.
And they just happened to be in the Marvel universe. Right. So on one hand, I was like not enthusiastic because it was like I go to see superhero movies to see superhero stuff. But then as I like was washing over me, I was like, but this is like really good. Like it's a strong movie from that perspective, from the people perspective, right? I'm not in a hurry to watch it again. Like I may never watch it again because it was like, well, it was very good, but also kind of boring. So like, not boring. That's a harsh word. Like I don't mean boring in a bad way. I just mean compared to other superhero movies, it was light on action.
Right.
But it was a very solid drama, but one that does not compel me to ever need to watch it again. Yeah.
That was one of the things too. The rewatchability of it is not very strong, unfortunately. Now, so Bryan and I guess we both watched it on Disney Plus because it just came out last week as we're recording this, and then my sister was watching it the other day, so I was cooking, and so I was like watching it again, and one or two scenes hit home a little more because I knew the entire arc, and then when you go back and watch some of those beats again, you're like, okay, yeah, oh, okay, that I see where that resonates, and then I was like, oh, but yet that one, in a weird way, for instance, the bridge fight between Atuma and Okoye, is that how you say the main general's name, right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, it almost felt a little too long, right? Like it almost worked against, the action scenes almost worked against the drama scenes or the whole narrative, the whole thing. When I watched it a second time, I was like, oh, this fight's a little long. I understand it. You want to see her lose. These people are obviously very powerful. And then she loses the princess, blah, 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 blah. But then the scene where the queen basically strips her of her rank, talks about what she lost. She lost her entire family for this country. That one hit me more the second time, for some odd reason. Maybe because I knew it was coming, and you get to really watch other things, not just the action, but the way what's her name? Angela Bassett, right? The way her physical presence, like you just get to watch more. And then I was like, okay, that's the scene that obviously won her the Golden Globe, right? Like it was such a raw, intense, emotional scene.
Yeah, and that's a great example of like, has there been a scene in any Marvel movie to date that was like as strong as that? Like, probably, I don't think so, right? Like, this was a real acting movie, right? Like,
right.
You could practically see a little crawl on the bottom saying, "For the Academy's consideration."
yeah.
Yeah, because in my brain, I'm going, the actress who plays Shuri has a ton of emotionality. I mean, she carries that movie, basically.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's that character's journey.
Yeah. And I don't know if she was even nominated. I don't remember. But so, yeah, it's a strange movie because it has to do so much. They obviously wanted to dedicate it to Chadwick Boseman. They make the death of Black Panther part of their continuity, so they're making a movie about it. By the end of it, I almost felt like the movie should have been called Wakanda Black Panther Forever. Not Black Panther Wakanda Forever. You know what I mean? Because it's really, it felt like the movie wasn't a Black Panther movie, it was a Wakanda movie. It was everybody. And then what happens is Shuri becomes the Black Panther for, once she accepts that her brother, she accepts the loss, the mourning that she's going to mourn, and then she becomes the Black Panther, So, and that was just, part of me was thinking, that would have been cool if I understand they need a Black Panther 2 movie, but how cool would it have been, like, this is not even a Black Panther movie, it's a Wakanda movie, but whatever. It's probably legalities and trademarks and da-da-da-da-da. Who cares? I was surprisingly disappointed in the big battle at the end. Like, Namor is saying, he's saying, I have more warriors than you have blades of grass, right? And then the whole big fight is on just a big ship out in the thing, and they don't have a lot. I mean, they had, more than the Wakanda crew, but I was like, is that smart, having a battle in the middle of the ocean when their powers are based on the water? Like, that's not too smart, right?
Right.
And the way they totally dominated Wakanda the first time they went with only a handful of people.
Yeah.
Which led to, like the Queen's death. And that was the big surprise moment for me,
Well, maybe that's why they elected to have the battle out there in the middle of the ocean. I mean, the Wakandans had already been humiliated on their own home soil, so why not take the battle to their house and prove that they can deal them just as serious a defeat in their element?
Yeah. Yeah, so there was some stuff in it that I was kind of like, okay, we got to the end of it. What do they do next? Like where do they go from here? Which that'll be whatever it wants to be. But yeah, so it was a decent movie. It was a little long. Some of it I felt wasn't as magical as the first one because, you get to see Wakanda for the first time. Here's the thing. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. This was one of the first times DC beat Marvel in terms of movies when it came to characters or settings. Like all the stuff they did with, I'm just going to call it Atlantis. While I was watching it and I was watching that, I was like, I've seen Aquaman. Instead of 2 orca fish, there was like 1,000 different fish. You can argue the CGI or whatever. This was the first time I felt that I was like, okay, another underwater. Like I wasn't as mesmerized by it like I was when we first saw Wakanda in the first movie. Because, like I said, there's been a whole Aquaman movie. Like the trench scene alone in Aquaman when he dives off the boat and all the trench characters are going with him and he's got this little flare going and the camera pulls back and it's just like a horror movie underwater. Like I was like, whoa. And I never felt the underwater scenes really got me. They didn't get the only time it got me was when Shuri was comparing Wakanda with Atlantis before she was ready to like kill Namor. And like their civilizations were the same and she realized he's a ruler just like she is and blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, that's cool. Obviously that's the comparison they want to show with these 2 nations that are, for lack of a better word, perfect, but so I think that was the other thing that kind of made me go, Namor.
I was very disappointed in Namor. I was, first of all, I was like thrown off by like, wait, okay, they just decided to make them Mayan and not like Atlantean. So that was like, I don't know, was there precedent for that in the comics? Doesn't really matter. They're allowed to change whatever they want in the movies. But the thing that was disappointing was, in the comics, Namor is intense.
Yeah.
He is a he is like through and through like a prick, just like a stone cold jerk, like all the time. Right. And I didn't get any of that intensity from this actor. Right. Like he just was like, I'm just like a generic bad guy, but I'm not even that bad. Like once you get to know me a little bit, I'm fine. And it's like, no, Namor is like, he's just like hardcore. I I don't know, because obviously he's likable at some times, right? Mm-hmm. But so because he has like a, I don't know, he's just like he's like a hard ass Wall Street tough guy, something. I don't know what kind of descriptors I'm trying to think of, but he has an intensity that I don't think that this actor portrayed.
Yeah.
And I don't, so it's like you take one of those notable characters in Marvel and then you just sort of like make him bland. And that was a disappointment because they're probably still going to do things with him in the future. And now he's not that compelling of a character. And so who even cares if he comes back? Whereas you should be, when Namor leaves, you should be like, whoa, what's with that guy? And what's he going to do? And you just felt like, some chump. You could go back underwater, have fun with the plankton, pal. Like you don't even care about him, right? At least I didn't care about him at all. So I don't know. To me, that was the biggest disappointment of them. I feel like they wasted a character.
Mm-hmm. Adam, you were nodding your head.
Yeah. I mean, this movie has plenty of redeeming qualities. I mean, I've again, my thoughts on this when they were fresher back in November are on record in that episode we did. So I encourage listeners to reference that and compare it to what I can say now a few months later when it's kind of faded in my mind. But yeah, I thought it was beautifully shot. There were some great character dives in it, some great performances here and there. I was especially struck by two sequences. One being the opening, like the royal funeral sequence, and the other one is when Shuri is being given her underwater tour of Talokan. I mean, as I agree with you, Peter, the place pales in visually, at least in terms of just like the CGI evocation of an underwater fictional kingdom. I mean, they did a better job with that in Aquaman, certainly. But I liked just kind of the use of three-dimensional space cinematographically, just the way underwater you can move around in all directions as opposed to just being bound by gravity to the surface you're standing on. And I liked all the scenes of the little underwater children playing the ancient Mayan ball through a stone hoop game that they used to play. Yeah, it was well realized enough. But yeah, it's any attempt that Marvel made to use Namor was probably going to be haunted by the memory of that Aquaman movie. And I think that is probably why we ended up with Talokan as opposed to True Atlantis, because they thought people would just say, they're ripping off the Aquaman movie. Never mind that Namor is several years older as a character than Aquaman, and that Aquaman didn't have any ties to Atlantis until like 10 or so years after he was created. Anyway, all that aside, yeah, I too was disappointed in the interpretation of Namor. I do think that the actor brought across a faint, understated irrationality bordering on mild insanity, which is something that Namor should have. I mean, it's I think it was Byrne who established there in the late 80s, early 90s that Namor, the reason he acted so crazy and had such violent mood swings from time to time, and he would kind of walk the fine line and sometimes jump right off the fine line between hero and villain, was because if he was out of water too long, there was like this oxygen imbalance in his brain that made him crazy. I got the sense from this actor that he might have projected the towering arrogance that we know of the Namor from the comics, but he did at least project a little bit of unhingedness in his portrayal of Namor. So there was that at least. But I'm hoping that maybe, like the large-scale, imperious, arrogant prick that Bryan is describing will be brought back to us when Namor takes part in stories that are more on a Fantastic Four scale. because I think we're all expecting Namor will probably come back in a Fantastic Four movie at some future time and make a play for Sue Storm. I think the first time he blows a horn made out of a seashell and summons a gigantic, 30-story tall whale monster to wreck New York, then that'll seem a little more like the Namor that we expect.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you where those moments were, but when I was watching it the second time, I saw flashes of. That's a great way that you put it. The irrationality of the characters sort of came through, certainly in the last scene, but in other places as well. And I sit there and I go, okay, was this because they needed Shuri to not kill him? She needs to feel like they're on some kind of level at some point to some degree. And if you just make him Namor, 100% Namor, does she care? Does she just go, I gotta get rid of this dude, let me just, and then she kills him? I don't know. So I don't know if some of it was story driven or if Marvel just doesn't want to totally give us a 100% bad guy, whether he's irrational, insane, or whatever. I just wanted, I wanted him to come out of the water. Like the first time he has that scene with the Queen and Shuri when they're doing that little ritual in the dark and he's talking really quiet, like it's all movie acting, right? Everybody whispers because the boom mic is right there. I was like, he should be just standing there like, I am, and just sort of matching the same energy that the Queen was matching. When she was a ruler, like when she was in that UN meeting and other places, and it was disappointing. I also, okay, so they want to play they want to make sure they do representation and okay. Mm-hmm. Great. Okay.
That's a concern too.
Sure. And
make him charismatic and sympathetic while at the same time villainous when he needed to be.
Yeah. And I certainly see, the pluses in, I for one should, be like, oh yay, sort of, he's from a culture that, was he, whatever. But just, I don't know. I just didn't. It just wasn't what I wanted. The one time he was a badass was when he was a little kid. And when he just rolls up on those people and they're like, oh, who's this kid? And he's like I'm Damien from Omen here. And he just rises up in the air. I was like, whoa, that's awesome.
El niño sin amor.
Hello, Shane.
Hello.
It's just us, no Kevin today. We're talking about Black Panther. So
it was long. That too. I liked it. I mean, it was fine, but it was long.
Yeah. Here's something I really like that I can remember us having conversations like this years ago is the fact that the MCU is kind of good about, this is a world populated by geniuses. So Riri having Stark technology or trying to recreate Stark technology in her own way totally makes sense, right? Yeah. You get flashes of it. It's not quite like, like when you read Watchmen and it's 1985, but there's a lot of technological advancement because of Dr. Manhattan. It's not to that level, but there's something to say about when people have crazy guns or whatever, their technology is a little bit more, you're like, okay, that's cool.
Yep. There's going to be some kind of trickle-down effect to the wider culture.
Like Shuri having an AI, just like Jarvis, right? That totally makes sense. I wanted the Midnight Angel armor, which I know is in the comics, not to be Iron Man-like. I almost wanted it to be Vision-like, since she worked on Vision in Infinity War. She got into like his head and was trying to fix him. And maybe that's why she has the new AI, but I sort of I thought it would have been cool to see her trying to create something that wasn't her own technology, because when you get Ironheart is Iron Man and then Midnight Angel kind of acts like Iron Man too. It's like, wow, there's a lot of Iron Man stuff going on. Glad I watched it. Like you said, Brian, I don't know if I'm going to watch it again.
I took Ben to see it in the theater. He really wanted to see it.
And I froze. And when we got home, he liked it and I liked it. I knew it came on Disney Now this week or the end of last week, whatever. I started it for a minute, but I don't know. I can't bring myself to watch it. Just not because I didn't like it, because of the time involved, and it wasn't the best one I've ever seen. It's kind of mid-level in my Marvel movie standings.
Yeah. It's like a long, beautiful, elaborate funeral procession during which a fight occasionally breaks out.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like some of Namor, but not a lot. Some of it I didn't. Sometimes he just didn't feel as menacing. Look, I don't know. It was okay.
Yep, I think we're all agreed that the film portrayal of Namor so far has lacked something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, Namor is such a prick in the comics, but then also people are always talking to him, and so I feel like he has to have charisma, but like you said, he's arrogant and like he is a little unpredictable. So sometimes he's doing bad shit and sometimes he's helping out or whatever. So like he's kind of like Loki a little bit, right? Like, but Loki is very, very likable in the movies, right? Like you can't, even though he's probably going to stab you in the back, you can't help but love the guy, right? And I feel like Namor obviously doesn't have a Loki level of charisma, but I feel like he has to be charming some of the time because people wouldn't, Sue Storm especially wouldn't fall for, I mean, she's come up against all the most badass evil dudes in the universe. She's not going to, and she's super smart. She's not going to be fooled by, one handsome guy, right? So he must have some kind of charm that, allows that to happen. And this guy, I don't know, maybe millions of women would disagree, but I didn't feel like he had a lot of charm.
He had just a little bit when he was talking to Shuri when she was in his kingdom, just a little bit, but that it kind of faded away a little bit too quick.
It almost felt like they were trying to do something between the two, right? Did I imagine that?
Yeah.
Did anybody else get that? Okay.
No, it seemed a little forced.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought it fell flat too. Like if they really did want it, not that they went back to it at the end, like during the fight.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh, are they going to make it so that she doesn't want to kill him because she likes him? But no, they never took it that far.
No, I would have been disappointed if they did.
Yeah, because she's a young girl too. So he's 50. What is he? 500 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
What do we like the addition of young T'Challa? Do we think that's a smart thing for the franchise, or what do you make of that scene?
I'll be curious to see what they do with it, because they really can't do anything with it for like 10 years.
Be a heck of a time jump.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, and who knows with Kang coming up, who knows, Avengers Forever, future imperfect kind of stuff, anything. So it sort of does make some sense, but I don't know if I liked it, because it to me it felt a little hollow then for everything that they built up to memorialize him, and then all of a sudden there's just this kid, and it's fine. It brings some lineage to it, but I don't know. That felt a little flat to me too.
I guess for me, it just sort of took some of the thunder away from his sister. Like, she earned this, did all this work to become the Black Panther, and at the end of the movie you're like, oh, but maybe the real Black Panther is coming soon, And it's like, wait, why do we need this? Like, can she just be badass for a long time? Like, why do we need to already be setting up what comes next?
Right.
That felt a little sexist or something.
I did sort of, I can't remember how I said it when Adam and I were talking about it before with the group, that when the Queen went to visit her, I forget her name, the mother of Nakia, maybe
Nakia.
I kind of thought maybe she was hiding something like that, but I wasn't sure. But towards as you get to that scene and you see the beach, I'm like, bet you something like that's going to happen, and that's what it was. So it didn't surprise me, because I felt like I sort of figured it out partway through, but I wasn't 100% concrete. But it just, for what they were showing, it kind of made sense. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I that was one of the things that got not spoiled for me, but I knew before going into the movie. And then there is a line that T'Challa's mother says where she's doing that little ritual with Shuri before Namor comes in, and she goes, "There's something I need to tell you about your brother." And I was like, "Oh, there it is." Okay.
Yeah.
So they did put it in the movie, and
that was kind of like the first little hint. And then you're like, well, it wasn't that he was dying. She already knew that. Like,
yeah. So okay.
And it might sound that I'm less excited now than I was when we first talked about it, but I was excited to see a new Marvel movie. But after thinking about it and then having it come on and not really feeling like I need to go watch it again, I was like, So like my true settled in feelings kind of came through a little bit more now in the last week or so.
Time is short, man. There's more stuff to watch.
Yeah.
More stuff to watch, more stuff to read.
Too true.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Where do you want to pivot to next? You want to talk about the DC stuff?
Talk about the DC
Vertigo stuff? Yeah, might as well go to. Okay.
Here, Peter.
What's this Nightwing statue? What's this?
Superpowers Nightwing, the new McFarlane Superpowers Nightwing.
Oh, good. Without the little the bird on his chest, which I'm not a fan of.
No, just the normal and 2 Eskrima sticks.
Yeah.
It doesn't look anything like McFarlane. I don't know.
Does he have blue on the boot?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Like, I Nightwing's my guy. I dressed up as him, at one of your Halloween parties. And I love the Bruno Redondo artwork on the new series. They just had Nightwing 100. They brought back some artists, which were really great. Like Rick Leonardi did a couple pages. I haven't heard from his name from a while. Scott McDaniel. And they gave Nightwing, Bruno adjusted it about 10 issues ago or whatever. But they gave him the animated version where the blue comes here, and then there's a little head of a bird right in the center, which in the animated universe had to do with him finding some tribe, and it was supposed to be tribal or whatever. And I was like, no, it's Nightwing, not Nightbird. I don't like the little, That's just my own personal.
They do have up by his collarbone. They do have 2 blue spikes jutting inward a little bit, which I don't remember if he regularly has that.
Yeah, he's had that since. I forget who designed it. It wasn't Scott McDaniel. I totally can't remember who it was. Whoever designed that blue stripe costume. Yeah, he's had that. So.
Nice, inexpensive action figure that kids could actually play with.
Cool, great. Yeah, DC Studios Chapter 1: Gods and Monsters.
Yeah.
Authority, baby. That's all I care about. I saw that
really?
list and I was just like, I don't care about any of those movies except for Authority. I mean, I watch all of them, but I'm just saying, I was like, oh yes.
Why
if it's anything like the comics, that would be so much fun.
I was trying to think, and I'm looking it up right now. I was trying to think of all the ones that were announced. Is there any of them that have never been seen before? And
ever.
Creature Commandos, maybe?
They had a DC Nation shorts. Those little DC on YouTube, which are brilliant, which are really a lot of fun.
Was it set during World War II? Is it the monsters versus Nazis idea?
I thought it was.
I'd have to look it up.
That's what I wish this new series was going to be about, but no, it's going to be contemporary and slightly silly from the looks of it.
Yeah. But the only one that has not had any media appearance is the Authority. That is the one. That's the only one that is completely fresh. So, and wow, I was surprised about that one. I really was.
I was too.
Yeah,
I would have never, not because it's bad or anything. I just never would have thought that would have been something right in the forefront.
Right. Well, because they don't.
Well, I think he's. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say because you don't think of Authority as DC. At least those of us who were there.
That's true. That's true. There's some truth to that.
Even though it was Wildstorm and it was printed by DC, it's Wildstorm. It's
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
Well, I feel like that's a title that's like kind of akin to Guardians of the Galaxy, where you take this stuff that 20 years ago would have seemed impossible that you could do that would be mainstream. And I think Authority, while maybe not as crazy as a talking raccoon with guns, but the whole, like, individually, the characters of the Authority seem like just like generic superheroes. But when you put them together and the team behaves the way they do, that is what would have been like not cool a couple years ago. But after like that Suicide Squad movie and Peacemaker and stuff, like now you can have heroes doing crazy shit and it's okay. And so the Authority makes perfect sense in that, in reference, like in comparison to those other things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think even like The Boys helped influence that a little bit too?
Yeah, I'm sure too. Right now that's been done. So this is just their version of The Boys, more or less.
Yeah. Maybe
not quite as insane.
No, but
Boys.
Just a little bit.
That show is intense. I love it.
And it really depends on which Authority they focus on, right? Like, the first 12 issues, the Warren Ellis, Brian Hitch stuff, it had 3 different arcs, I believe, right? And 3 different stories in those, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And Brian Hitch kept having to draw these double splash pages of just 1,000 villains, 1,000 ships, 1,000 whatever. And they would kill, they would defend, they would do what they needed to do. But at the heart of it, Jenny Sparks, there was still some kind of like, what do we call it? Nobility? I don't know. Some kind of like hope to change what's the world on some aspect. In fact, I think that was one of the Stormwatch titles, was Change the World or something like that. So if they go that route, that's cool. If they go the Mark Miller, Frank Quietly part, where they did turn more into The Boys, when they were drinking and having sex and killing Avenger counterparts, and it just got a little grittier, a lot grittier, and a lot raw. I could see them using that as a story device, right? Like, you can't have this super team go unchecked, right? Like, you need a balance, and maybe that's how they get a Justice League down the road, But so it's going to be interesting which way they actually present them. That's going to be a fun story part to it.
Yeah.
Have you read those issues, Adam? Have you read Authority?
I don't think I ever have.
Oh, that's some good stuff. That Warren Ellis stuff that you're talking about. I mean, I like the other stuff too, but that was a big story, like a really big story.
Yeah.
The scope was awesome.
First, 12 or 24 issues were really something.
First 12, are Hitch, and
yeah.
Let's see. It came out in 1999, so that's after your year. Yeah.
Yep, I just didn't buy it.
Oh, okay. And now it's going to be super hard to buy.
Well, yes, trades are plentiful, I'm sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
I still have the trades of that.
Yeah, you should sell.
I kind of wonder if I do have the issues yet. I don't think I do. I think I sold them to Chris, but I'm not sure. I'd have to really go through and look.
That was one of the things, the surprise that, especially the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, those, it was selling out at places. And I was very surprised at how much this announcement moved, even not just the speculator part of it. Like, people are buying up old Booster Gold issues now, and it's like, oh my God, But the fact that, like, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, some of the Authority trades, like, things are they posted on Twitter that DC's like, oh, I guess we have to do some new printings here.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's pretty cool. That's the way you want it, right? So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm not sure how I feel about a Waller series. I'd rather it just be Suicide Squad.
Well, I'm sure the Suicide Squad will factor into it somewhere.
I'm sure they will.
I mean, that's the part that he gets to be in charge of, right? Like, his corner is going to survive. Waller, Creature Commandos, it will probably have some tie to that to some degree.
I would think.
Yeah.
There's a new Peacemaker project coming out. I'm sure that's...
Yeah, that one, the season 2 is on hold, but this is it's an 8 to 10 year plan. And he said This is only a part of that plan. So
and we'll see if the other parts ever actually get produced. It's all a bit of a wait and see right now.
Hell, we'll see if this stuff gets produced, right? You never know.
Right.
They only gave a date for was it the Superman one? That's the only one that really has a date, and the rest are, is it 2025? Is it 2028? When are those movies going to come out? When are those live action going to come out? I don't know.
I was surprised that a Booster Gold series was announced. I mean, I'm thrilled, but I want it done well, not completely stupidly.
Yeah.
Like, I get it's going to be goofy at spots, and it should be, but I also want it done well. I want him to be the hero that nobody knows about too.
A Booster Gold series that Dan Jurgens could be proud of.
Yeah, exactly.
The Brave and the Bold, right, is a curious choice for a movie. If like the whole point of the series was, a crossover with some other character every issue or whatever, what are you going to do? Like one movie and then there's like one, maybe they'll have two special appearances by other characters. And then we got to wait 3 years for Brave and the Bold 2 to find out who else they team up with. Like that feels like that should be a show where every week there's a new person.
Yeah. Just like there was an animated series by that title on Cartoon Network for years. And that's just what it was, a team-up series.
Yeah. That was such a great series.
I think this is going to be a Batman and Damian Wayne team up kind of, but I don't think they're even really thinking in those terms. They're just using the title because they own it and they want to just keep it under trademark, I guess.
That's what I was thinking too, because they really talked about it being a Bat family movie. And I'm like, well, then I don't know that I'd call it Batman Brave and the Bold. I don't like that. I'd rather be Batman centric and save Brave and the Bold for something else where it means something. Now they could surprise us and it does mean something, and that's great. But just at first thought, I'm like, Bat family movie. I don't know if I'd have called it that.
I guess Batman Family, would that sell as a movie title? So they have to, they have to pick something else,
I mean, it might for me, because I did enjoy that title and all its silliness.
Sure.
From back in the day.
Are you all okay with having a Batman in the main continuity and then having, the Matt Reeves Batman just continues? How do you guys feel about that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love Batman. Don't get me wrong. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it because Batman sells. So it's okay. I just want them to both be good if you're going to do it. And I don't even care if they eventually multiverse cross them over, but I don't want that anytime soon. And I really don't need a Joker anytime soon. And I really don't want another origin anytime soon. So I'm glad that they're talking about just going in with Batman and Robin, and you already have Matt Reeves Batman without really much of an origin. Thank God. So stay away from that and just tell good stories. And it'll be all right. But I don't need a Batman movie every year as a result of it either. There's so much to do with the DC universe. I don't need it to be Bat-centric all the time. Like, I want to see some other stuff.
Warner Brothers does. They want them revenue.
The Bat bucks.
Yeah. I know.
Let's see. The one I thought was kind of cool was the Lanterns one, only because they say they want to try to make it like a True Detective show. And I was like, oh, wow. First of all, that's a high bar. Mm-hmm. You want your show to be like True Detective? Okay. Because True Detective wasn't like True Detective in season 2 and 3. So
no, it was only season 1 was True Detective.
Yeah. All the rest were, whatever.
See, now I didn't read it like that. I took it as a True Detective show, meaning more about procedural detectiveness.
Right. Top drama police procedural, which would be cool.
Of True Detective.
I was a little disappointed to see that it's going to be mostly set on Earth, though.
Yeah, I was too.
Well, someone made the point of, okay, like if you do lean into True Detective season 1, they told 2 narratives at the same time, one in the past, one in the present. So there could be a way that even if it is set on Earth, they could do flashbacks maybe out in space,
Yeah, they could.
They could try to make it they could try to expand the universe possibly. I feel that's what like the Booster Gold part of it all is like, that's how you pull future stuff. Maybe that's how you pull Legion into this whole concept,
Yeah.
Because it seems like he's trying to hit all the corners without being obvious, right? Other than the Superman movie, you know, and even the Batman movie, your other whatever part of the, you know, pick a shape, triangle, square, whatever. Wonder Woman is not necessarily Wonder Woman. It's a Game of Thrones type story about the Amazons, you know. Same thing with Lanterns, you know, like that's another big corner of the DC universe, but yet it's not quite giving us what we've already have. So some of that makes me feel like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. And now it's just a matter of, can you do it? Can you pull it off?
Yeah. And I like the idea of really, just like Marvel did, really nailing down these actors to be the actors in the movies and the TV shows and the voices if they do animated stuff. I think that does add to a cohesiveness to everything. And if you can do it well enough, then it'll be fine and it'll work.
Right.
Be able to do a lot more with it when you can throw in an animated something that ties into all of it now and then.
This has to be their last fresh start, right? Like they can't do this again in 3-4 years. Like whoever they cast as Superman, Batman, like they got to be your guys for the next 15 years or whatever until you kill them or whatever, you know, like obviously. But yeah, and like you said, and then they got to start weaving the TV shows into the movies and back into the TV shows and doing all. They just got to follow Marvel's playbook and have each show have a slightly different personality, make it interesting. They don't all have to be super serious, but some should be super serious and some should be more fun. And then we want to tune in and don't try to give us too many episodes. Like Marvel, I think one of the best things they do is like most of their shows are like 6 episodes. It's like perfect. You just gave me 6 incredible episodes and then I wait. Or maybe there isn't even a season 2 because they just told the story they needed to tell and then they'll tell a new story next time. That has been working so well. I'll be so happy if I get the same thing from DC. It's just more content for us. It's just as geeks, like I don't care if it's Marvel or DC. I just want DC to like. I think that's why I get doubly pissed at the disaster of DC. It's not because I'm a Marvel guy. It's because they wasted an opportunity to give us another set of stories that we would enjoy.
And it's been, I mean, I love the first Superman movie and even Superman 2. I love the 89 Batman and I love certain things that happen in Christian Bale, but they've really missed an opportunity for way more years than what Marvel even started with doing something like this, which would have worked at least in the late 80s, early 90s with all this stuff going on. And ever since then, it's just been trial and error without much successes other than your singular movie here or there. And that's great. But I really thought that they were on a better path when they did Wonder Woman, the first one, which I loved. And I even give credit for the Batman Superman movie, even though the story didn't pan out the way I would have liked it to. I didn't mind trying to do a team up movie that way because there were plenty of times where you had Batman and Superman meet up and they weren't friendly to each other at first and they were problematic. And then they came to a resolution at the end and did something for the greater good. And then they move on from there. So I really thought that maybe they were going to do better with it, but it just kept failing miserably. And I know there's a lot of people that like the Justice League movie and it's fine, but there's a whole crap ton of other stuff, including most of the Marvel things I'd watched before I watched that Justice League movie. And I mean, you all know I'm a huge Justice League fan, but it's just mediocre to me. And it's not because of the actors. I like the actors that they got together. It's the stories and the way they portrayed Darkseid and Apocalypse and everything they tried to tie into it. It just didn't work as well for me. And then it fell flat.
WB never had the forethought to create a studio devoted solely to their comics division.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have to, right? When you were the one that can put out a Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, and you can put out even the first Joker movie, or you have a 10-year long run a show on the CW with Smallville that was hugely popular, whether you liked it or not. Like that show that crossed tons of demographics. It was You know, it was very influential. They never had the forethought to go, a Smallville universe. Like, why didn't they do what they did with the Arrowverse starting in 2001 with Clark Kent? And suddenly, no, because back then they were like, no, you can't use Batman in your little TV show because we know what we're going to do with Batman Begins, right?
Yeah.
So they never had the forethought because they never had to. Even with the X-Men movies, even with the Spider-Man movies, nobody was creating a universe. So WB was like, okay, we'll do another superhero whenever we get to it, right? Plus, they had their whole other library, the Vertigo stuff, when they did Constantine, Road to Perdition, like just all these other movies that were under the DC umbrella. The WB never turned it's like the Eye of Sauron, right? They never turned it in that direction to try to mine the damn thing. They could have been doing this well in advance,
Oh yeah.
Even with the CW universe, again, whether you like it or not, it spawned so many spin-offs, and it became its own universe. And they managed to do Crisis on Infinite Earths before the movie verse could even get off the ground.
Yeah.
So that's what the problem is. So you're right. Like, they can't do this again. If this fails, if something happens, somebody gets fired, do they have the money? Certainly there's allowances for some of these projects to change. Mm-hmm. That was one of the things that I thought I really liked was James Gunn said, we are going to get a script. We are not going to write a script and then not have a third act, start filming, and then write it on the go. We're not going to do that. And he said, if something doesn't work, then we'll move things around. That's why none of this stuff has dates, except for the Superman one. If it gets too far off kilter, then you're probably just going to see Batman movies for the rest of our lives because those are the ones that make money.
Yeah. Like, I keep thinking a 10-year plan to start. And I've said it before. I'm like, I'm 50. Come on. We're talking into 60 here. Like, get moving. I'd like to see some of this.
Did they cast Superman yet?
No.
No.
This is the part I hate the most, is when people start doing fan casting online, because they only choose people because of what they look like, or they pick people that have already been in 5 million other superhero movies and projects, and you're like, oh, here we go. But you're right. Like, I think Brian said, they have to pick younger people. They can't pick 30, 40-year-olds. Because, you're going to have to cast maybe like a Green Lantern if they want him to be older, but he's still going to be younger comparatively. Because how old is Robert Downey Jr.? Is 60? Isn't he something like 50s?
He's in his 50s. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they don't want old guys doing these things.
Well, what I'm coming back to here is the fact that the title is going to be Superman Legacy. Which leads me to wonder if maybe we're not talking about Dad Superman and Jonathan Kent.
Yeah, I thought of that too.
So maybe that's why they're not going with Cavill, because I don't think he's old enough to be father to a 20-something. Maybe they deliberately are looking for somebody older to play Kal-El.
I think he specifically said it's about Kal-El in his 20s.
Okay.
Clark Kent, I should say.
Okay, then never mind.
Yeah. Although, I mean, that would be interesting.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr.'s 57, 58.
Okay. No, he's not as old as I thought. All right.
A little, makeup. He'll be ready for whenever the Kang, happens and we see Iron Man again. Because if I don't have a cameo from Iron Man, I'll be pissed. Yeah. I'm going on record right now.
How many years was it since the first Iron Man, though? It's been, 13, 14?
2008.
So he was, hell of a lot younger then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, even starting in your late 30s, early 40s, like they want young bucks on this. They really do. They, because it just makes sense. And you get them cheaper and you can get them for multiple contracts.
Yeah. You sign them to an 8-movie deal right off the bat. You want to be Superman? That's it.
Yep. That's all your career is going to be for the next 10, 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And take it. Just take that fat money and run and live the American dream, man. Come on.
Right.
I'm bored at my job sometimes. That actor, He's bored playing in Superman, the fourth Superman movie. Too bad. That's what we do at jobs. We get bored. Okay. At least you're getting millions of dollars.
Yeah, to be bored.
And I don't get millions of dollars.
No.
So suck it up.
I'm struggling to be happy to look out the window.
Sign the longest contract in movie history, whatever.
Yeah.
You're Superman in perpetuity. That's it.
It really is the old studio days.
And we can use your likeness after you die in CGI form.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I'm hoping that their agents are smarter about these days. More money for streaming, more likeness. Oh, I'm doing voiceover work. Okay, well that's more money. And you want my voiceover and likeness for a video game? Okay, that's another contract.
I can't see how agents and even actors wouldn't be smarter now with everything that happened once the pandemic hit and movies were being released right into streaming and contracts were all befuddled because of it, that you got to have a platform for the streaming side, the download side, the digital this or voiceover. Yeah, it has to be common now. You know
how Hollywood is. They're always claiming they're broke.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't make money.
Oh, and again, some 24-year-old handsome guy who's waiting tables has a chance to sign a contract to be Superman. Like every rock and roll band in history, you sign the worst record deal possible, but you're so excited because you got a record deal. And still, I mean, these people they're just people, and they're, they might have an agent and they might have a lawyer, but like those people want to cut too. So they're urging them to sign contracts because then they get their 20% or whatever. Yeah, so like,
but you're dealing with two people, like whoever's the new WB guy who came over from Zaslav or whatever his name is. He's cheap. And then you got Peter Safran, who's the other co-CEO for DC Studios with James Gunn. He's known as being the producer who comes in on budget, on time, so you got some, those negotiations are going to be interesting.
Number crunch and penny pushers.
Yeah. So, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, for those of you who read it, are you excited about that one becoming a movie?
I'm excited because I didn't expect it. I didn't read the story yet. I think I have the trade of it. If I don't, then I have it bookmarked on my app. But I'm excited to see what comes of that. That it seems like such a unexpected hit of a comic to turn it right into a movie. That it's not a bad thing. It's fresh.
Well, and they need, some. It'd be nice to have some female energy. That second Wonder Woman movie was like unwatchable, so like they can't have a Wonder Woman movie for a while. So like, let's try Supergirl instead. Like cool.
I was so excited for that movie being set in the 80s, and
oh my God, so bad.
That was horrible.
And Tom King is one of the core writers that Gunn has compiled.
So
that's good.
Can we assume that that's one of the things he'll be working on, since it's basically his brainchild?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yep. I like Shane. I own the trade. I trade waited for it. I haven't read it yet. But it involves Comet the Super Horse, I'm pretty sure. So instant marker quality, in my opinion.
There's so many things that when I read Tom's work, it reads so much better in one sitting, in groups of like 6 or 12, either half the series, the whole series, whatever it is. It just reads better continuously. To try and do it month to month at times drives me nuts.
Figures that was the one title I didn't get physical. I don't know why. I was just like, maybe that one, because I was already getting, whatever came before. It was like Strange Adventures before it.
Yeah.
And then I knew
Shock was in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. And then after it was Human Target, which I knew I was going to get. Danger Street, which I knew I was going to get. And I was like, well, maybe that one I'll just read. And then this happens, and I'm like, I could have sold those babies, No.
If I have anything, it's just the first issue or two and the trade. I know I don't have a lot of the issues individually, because I did the same thing. I'm getting all this other stuff from Tom. I'll just read that one in the trade. Yeah. It's going to read better that way anyway.
Yeah. So here's the thing this idea of announcing slates, we've come to expect it from Marvel. I guess it happens with like Star Wars.
It does now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not entirely new to the Hollywood system, I mean, that's what your upfronts are, right? When CBS has an upfront meeting, they're basically in front of their reporters. They're showing them the TV shows that are going to be on CBS for the next year.
Right. And we had that every fall for Saturday morning cartoons for years. Here's the CBS slate or the ABC slate of upcoming cartoons for the fall season.
Yeah. And now that's a little more truncated, right? It's just 1 year, 1 season. This is same thing with Marvel. It's these long. So do you, does this, I guess, I mean, we might have already answered it, but what do you feel about that? Like, should it, is this too much? Is it enough? Should we only maybe have half these announcements? What do you think? Like, only things leading up to Superman? What do you think about that?
I think if they pull it off and most of these projects come to fruition, then this is the right amount, because Marvel sometimes in the beginning was very hard to wait for the next announcements. You were only getting like 2 or 3 movies ahead for a little bit. And as it got bigger, you got more.
Yeah.
This is pretty ambitious right now, especially considering the track record. So like Bryan said earlier, if this fails, that's going to take a lot of credibility away from it. So it's not a bad slate to have for the next few years. It's not the full 10 years, just the beginning. But if half of this stuff doesn't come to fruition at all, that's going to damage it a lot, in my opinion.
I mean, the fact that we're even talking about it at all is like amazing, right? There's no precedent, right? Until recently, there's never been a universe or anything that's been big enough in movie history or even TV history to span all these titles over all these years. It was like the best you would get was Back to the Future to be continued. They're going to be 2 more movies. And like, we're going to spin off CSI into New York and Miami. Like, oh, wow, that's exciting, right? Like, that's it. Like, you know, or the Jeffersons come out of All in the Family. Like that like there hasn't been this idea. Even Star Wars was small. Like when they first announced like the new
trilogy.
Well, we knew there was going to be 3 because it's going to be a trilogy. That's it. There were no TV shows. There was no nothing. It was just like, we got 3 more movies coming. So this is insane that we're like talking, you know, Marvel and DC are like, here's 12 new properties. And this is just the next phase. There's going to be a phase after that and a phase after that. Like,
and especially across all this mediums.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's the best part. But I love that they're thinking big, that they're not just like doing one movie at a time and then deciding what comes next. It's like, no, they're weaving these stories all together and they're figuring out what makes sense as a TV show and what makes sense, you know, like take She-Hulk, for example, super entertaining show. Is that piece of the puzzle just to be a super entertaining show and just get more eyeballs and make more money for Disney Plus? Successful, right? 100% successful, I think. Or is it that they really want She-Hulk to be part of the next Avengers team, and this is a great way to get people introduced to the character? So does it work, you know, on 2 levels for them, right? And just the fact that they're even having those conversations and that they're writing all this stuff on a whiteboard and saying, "Ooh, wait, what about this?" Like when Marvel and DC would have their powwows of all their writers would get together and figure out what they're going to do for the next, you know, year or 2. This is just that on an even bigger scale, and it's really exciting that we live in a world where this happens now.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty awesome.
I really feel like we're getting the DC 52 kind of Rip Hunter whiteboards right now to pick out all these little pieces and try to see how they're going to fit together. And they're just little snippets of stuff that's going to come.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, I like that.
Adam, when we were talking the one other time about what characters could we see, do you think this is a good cross section of a DC franchise?
Feels like it to me.
Yeah.
They could go into a couple more genres, I guess, but that just I guess I don't want to do a Western right out of the starting gate here. We got Swamp Thing. I see there's like the last thing they mention, but that's that'll be horror, I suppose. And Creature Commandos is certainly a step outside of the standard superhero mold, but yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah,
it's not bad for a starting sampling.
And you can play with other, like Swamp Thing is a whole other corner of the DC universe too. You know, there's so many characters you can introduce. Technically, Supergirl is a Western, technically, isn't it? True Grit. It's based on True Grit. Is True Grit a Western? I don't know. I've never seen it.
Yes. True Grit is definitely a Western. I had no idea there was any connection between Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and True Grit.
Sort of like a riff on True Grit.
Yep. Well, like I said, I haven't read the Maxi series yet, and I've also never seen either of the True Grit movies.
Here comes the True Grit police. I'm going to get you.
Yep, all the way. Put me in the hoosegow.
The good thing is they, they canceled certainly a lot of, like, Pennyworth is canceled, Doom Patrol is canceled, Titans is finally put out of his misery. I'm
still going to watch that last season, though. I haven't started it yet, but I'm going to watch it.
God, talk about it, the most disappointing.
Yeah.
As a huge Titans fan, I know there are people who love it. A lot of people love it just because of, you know, you get to see the characters in live action. You get to see them in costumes sometimes.
Barely.
The stories are just. I could write those stories better than they could. It's just not my.
Yeah, I agree that it's fun to see costumes in live action, but boy, some of those episodes are hard to get through. I think the Teen Titans cartoon was better. Like Teen Titans Go is fun and all that, but the Teen Titans where it started, that was phenomenal. Like
Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go are one of the things I laughed about that part of this new slate. You know, they're calling it DC Elseworlds, which is a DC concept.
Yeah, makes sense.
Way to have stories set outside your continuity, but it's also a way to tap into it if you want multiverse stories, right? You know, totally great, fine, awesome. But I had to laugh because I was like, you're putting Teen Titans Go, the Reeves and the Reeves Batman verse, and you know, even the Joker movies, which are award-winning. It's an award-winning movie. You know, like
I haven't seen it.
The first Joker.
Nope.
I haven't seen it either.
No,
the Joaquin Phoenix, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're a Scorsese fan, I mean, so are the people who made this movie.
Yeah. It's like
I think I just don't give a shit about the Joker. Well, like I haven't even really liked the Joker in like 30 years. I don't know. I
like the Joker, but you can't have the Joker without Batman. And to have this be some completely now, again, I'm saying this without seeing it. I will watch it at some point, someday. I'm just not in a rush to do it at all.
Watch it for just if you like good acting. I mean, he won an Academy Award for it. Not to say that that's always the bar, but I was riveted by his performance. And yeah, it's a good movie. Don't even go and think of a superhero comic book movie joke. Just think it's a guy who's a nut who likes to dress up like Joker. You know what I mean? Like don't even think of it in Batman terms.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get some of that, but just watching it, I was like, I felt like those old 70s. So this is a complete tangent. There's a movie that I remember watching on like HBO or Prism when I was young. And it was like about this old couple who lived near the boardwalk. And they got beat up by young teens. And I think the wife died and it doesn't end on a happy note. It was like every Scorsese, it was like Requiem for a Dream before Requiem for a Dream. It just made you feel terrible. Like, okay, you really don't want to see those movies like that. Right. But that was what this movie was like. I was like, I don't want to live in this world, you know, but just, it was so, you had to watch it because it was so riveting, you know. It has some things in it, you know, that's kind of like, whatever. But his performance was just as an acting. I mean, it's good. It's good. All right. So that was that. Anyway, my point was like Teen Titans Go, Teen Titans, Batman, Joker. I mean, these are where your auteurs, your filmmakers want to go to make these movies based on superhero franchises, right? So you could go through the entire who's who, and maybe somebody wants to do a question series, but you don't necessarily want to tap it into the continuity. I don't know, like, or maybe there's some other better character to choose from, and then you stick him in this. It's like when Zaslav talks about saving money or needing to make money for the WB, you can't go bigger than Teen Titans Go. I mean, that generates a lot of money for them with merchandising and syndication and all that. So I feel it's number one, it's like almost like their war chest. It's like their secret, it's the thing you roll out. Like, okay, we're going to give you these 10 connected properties, but now we also, and it's the thing that Marvel doesn't have, right? They don't have another part of their movie making that is solely there to entice. Like, I want DC Elseworlds, after all the shit talking that Tarantino and Scorsese has said about the Marvel universe, I want them to announce a Scorsese DC movie. Because it's like, yeah, I want to do this, because they can do that. And that would go, people would go crazy for that.
But even with that list, I would have added, I know they're ending, but I would have added some of the other CW shows or Batman Brave and the Bold, because especially Batman Brave and the Bold, that is something that you could really throw into this Elseworlds thing with just even a new animated movie and really pull so many people into all those characters. That was such a fun, family-friendly show that was interesting, not completely goofy, and introduced you to a crap ton of DC characters.
And they, like I said, maybe they have more things because they're all ending, right? They know Flash is ending. They canceled all the Greg Berlanti stuff. Like, they don't want to know from him anymore.
Even Superman and Lois is only going to be another season or two, right? If you're lucky.
Right. So maybe we'll definitely get some new announcements there. So
it is a really cool idea, though, to use the Elseworlds branding and have like these amazing
one-off
directors, do interesting things with superheroes to prove, just like people have been proving in comics for decades, that comics aren't just for kids and it's not just light fluff. Like, there's intense comics, right? Like, just ask Alan Moore what, come on. So instead of these guys, I do get a little irritated when these people come on and trash talk comic movies. It's like, well, yeah, Scorsese's making different levels of, like, I understand. I love Scorsese movies. But at the end of the day, movies are about entertainment. Even the movies that make us feel things and are sad or deep or whatever, it's still, we go to the movies to be entertained, right? And so even if you're Scorsese, you're still just entertaining people. So why don't you do a little research, learn the history of comics a little bit, and then say, oh, other people before me proved to the world that superhero comics can be real and meaty and serious. Yeah. And so take that energy and make a real, serious, meaty superhero movie. You'd be surprised, Martin, if you read some comics, what you'd find, right? And same with, and fucking don't tell me Tarantino didn't read comics as a kid. Come on.
Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
Heck, he was trying to make a Star Trek movie.
Right.
Yeah. Well, how is that any different?
Right. He has that whole Superman conversation in one of the Kill Bill movies, So the whole monologue thing. But they don't even have to do superheroes. They can just pick anything that DC still owns, like in their defunct Marvel line, Vertigo line, in their
I was saying line. Superheroes when I should have said comics, right?
Yeah, sure. That'd be amazing. So
yeah.
Would somebody please make a Gotham by Gaslight movie? How awesome would that be?
Amazed no one has.
Right?
Didn't they make an animated movie of that?
They did.
Oh, okay.
No, those don't count.
That's one thing DC does good.
Oh, they always did. But even that, I don't like the current DC animated movies animation as much as I liked previous ways to do it.
Right. Here's the challenge. Do one of those animated movies and make it part of your slate.
Yeah.
Get it back in the movie theater. Even if it's Batman, just do something. Put us back in the theater with an animated movie. Then, number one, you're different from Marvel, right? You sort of set yourself aside because Marvel hasn't done that yet. And you have a strength because you have a dedicated studio to animation. So that would be great. That'd be amazing.
Star Wars is doing it, right? Oh, sorry, Murd, go ahead.
I was just going to point out they did Legion of Super Pets.
Oh yeah, League of Super Pets, yeah.
And I think I didn't see that in the theater, but I think the last one I did see was a Teen Titans Go animated movie that was in the theater.
Teen Titans Go to the movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I think the other one or two were direct to video, but that first one, that was in the theater, and that was awesome.
Yeah. What is Star Wars doing?
Well, it's not in the theater, but like Bad Batch and Clone Wars and stuff, like they're officially part of the universe, right? And they're telling these stories in a sequence that maps out in their whole plan, right? And so putting it on the big screen is an interesting idea to make everybody know it's First Class Citizen, right? But I'd just be happy if they were officially part of the plan. I think the reason I haven't paid attention to any of these DC movies is they're all just like one-offs or whatever. Individually, they may be good, but I want things that fit into the larger piece, right? Like now, like to me, the landscape has changed. I don't want just one-offs anymore. I want big picture stuff, right? So, and that's where if they just said in their slate, like, here's the 15 things coming, 3 of them are animated, then I'm in. I'll watch them. It's fine. But if you just keep doing random things, even if they're good, I'm not interested. What does it solve? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm sure they probably have something that's in the works that was started before the slate. And now everything after, hopefully, will be that. So.
Yeah. Creature Commandos is animated though, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And the video games are meant to take place like in between a lot of stuff as well. But that'll come down, next 3-4 years probably.
That I'm less thrilled about. I just don't play them as much.
They're hard now. Video games are hard.
Oh my God, yeah. And rightfully so. My kids are really good at them because they're younger, more dexterous. They understand them a little bit easier. So they're whipping my butt at anything.
We grew up with Dragon Slayer. Come on. There ain't no game harder than that one.
Yeah, you don't actually play Dragon Slayer. You just count the milliseconds and press the button at the right time.
Yeah. And spend what was it, $1.50, $2 to play that game?
Oh my God. 50 cents and you would die instantly.
Yeah.
First
Pac-Man
time,
was a quarter.
Trying to get over that little drawbridge in the beginning or whatever. Dead. Oh, I'm done.
Shane, before we go on to the next, have you been reading the new Star Trek series from IDW?
No, I have a bunch of the Mirrorverse ones that were out in the last year or so, and I have to finish that, but I haven't picked up anything else yet. So
this new one, it's about 3 or 4 issues deep, is it takes place between Nemesis. No, takes place between the end of Voyager and Nemesis.
Okay.
Which they said was like one of the more untapped parts of Star Trek. And it has, I guess it's a spoiler, but your main character is Cisco.
Really?
Yep. And it has Cisco. It has Data, Beverly. Tom Paris is flying the ship.
Wow.
And Scotty is your engineer.
That's an eclectic group.
Yeah. It's meant to be like a cross section of the entire Star Trek franchise in that period, which was really empty. And it's some mystery. They have a new ship that's also like a mystery. They haven't really done anything with the ship quite yet in 3 issues. As far as like franchise licensed property comics, it has a feeling of how important is it really? Like it's not going to be important to the larger tapestry. Yeah. But I really like it for a crossover Star Trek show. And then there's a sister title called Star Trek Defiant, which is Worf, Lore, Ensign Rowe, and like a couple other characters that are like just all picked from different things.
Love Ensign Rowe.
Yeah. So one is a series, one is a miniseries, I think, and then eventually they're going to cross over. I'm totally digging it. Totally digging it. So, and it's just called Star Trek.
And some of that's because with Star Trek and even Star Wars, I read some of the comics, but I've never read everything that's ever been put out because I get a little bored with it. I like the Mirror Universe stuff is intriguing because I could read alternate crossover stories like that a lot easier than just regular Star Trek or Star Wars books that are sort of in continuity. It always bothered me when they tried to make everybody look as real as possible, or the stories just weren't that great, or the covers are awesome but the art inside sucks. So
this is pretty good. That's pretty good.
I'll check that out. Like J.K. Woodward's Star Trek stuff's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to check that out. I really didn't pay much attention to that when it was coming out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprisingly good.
You ready for season 3 of Picard?
Oh, I mean, we have to be, because season 1 and 2 were so disappointing. So season 3 better be good.
I actually like season 1 a little bit. Season 2, I had a hard time with.
I haven't even finished season 2. It's been so tough to get through.
I'm looking forward to 3.
That's the final season, they've said. So that's probably a good thing. One way or the other, it'll be a good thing. Either it'll be good or it'll be good that it's over.
Yeah. Now, somewhere I had heard or read, I don't remember, maybe it was on a YouTube thing. It is the last season of Picard, but that doesn't mean that these characters won't be back to do something. And I'm like, okay, so if this is the big season 3, the end of it, and then you're just going to have them show up in another show next season, that I hope not. But I'll be glad if some of these people show up again, if it's interesting.
I mean, they could just give me Strange New Worlds for the rest of forever, and I'll be happy.
From your lips to God's ears, there. That I can't wait for that
directly into my brain. It's so good. Yeah. Do we know? Have they said when that might be happening? We don't know yet, right?
I don't think there's a date yet. No, I don't know for sure. And it has to coincide in some way with Lower Decks, because there's a crossover between the two, which I love. Lower Decks.
October of 2023.
Okay.
I feel so far away. Okay.
Lower Decks surprised me for being. I did not think I would like that. I was kind of thinking that would be just a throwaway thing that I probably wouldn't watch much of, but it is really good. Even if you're not a Star Trek fan, it's entertaining. But if you are, they throw in a lot of crap that's right from the shows and pull in ancillary characters that mean something to Lower Decks, but were just 1 episode, 2 episodes in passing in whatever show they were in. And it's just amazing what they weave into that animated show. And the actors that did these characters in various shows 20, 30 years ago are back doing them now. Probably some of it because they don't have much to do now, but it's also interesting that they're reprising their roles from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But Strange New Worlds, I started rewatching it again. I couldn't wait for something else new. I wanted to see these characters. I wanted to see Pike do Captain stuff the way it was just amazing. Well, such a great show.
That's a franchise that needs an overhaul too with the movies. But let's do our final thing so we don't run out of time.
All right,
because I read these damn books. I want to talk about it.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So we are celebrating Vertigo, 30 years of Vertigo, which was launched officially in January of 1993. And we decided to read the first issues of the first 5 projects. Most of them entirely new concepts. Some of them branched out from previous comics that weren't under the Vertigo line, but certainly were under the line that became Vertigo, which I think in the last episode, I thought they were all brand new. So the first issue of Death, High Cost of Living, which was 3 issues. Enigma, which was 7 or 8 issues.
8, I think.
8 issues. Okay.
It was 8.
Sandman Mystery Theatre, which is the first issue of 70. Mercy, which was a one-shot, and Kid Eternity, which lasted about 16 issues. That was spun off from a 3-issue miniseries prior. And of course, Death obviously being spun out from the Sandman series. So those 5 issues.
So guess which one I didn't like.
I bet you the Ann Nesenti one. The Kid Eternity? Yeah. No? Oh. Well, now I'm confused.
Mercy.
Oh,
my God, what even was that about?
That's what I was going to get.
There was like no story. It was just like a bunch of random scenes. I don't know. I suffered through all 64 pages or whatever of that, but I still don't. I couldn't tell you what happened. I don't know.
That one I did not read. You can scold me. I was going to read these after work today. And
50 Lashes with a Wet Noodle, Shane.
That got changed, but I did read 2 of them.
Okay. No. That's the good thing about this. We can pick 5 and then we can. So that's good. Let's go from the bottom to the top. So written by J.M. DeMatteis, illustrated by Paul Johnson. This was a 64-page one shot. So, Adam, your thoughts on that one?
Okay. Do you want me to try to encapsulate what happened?
Maybe in the conversation, since we're, I don't know how much longer you guys have. I don't want to go too late.
Okay.
So.
The whole thing, it's from the perspective of a guy who has recently had a debilitating stroke. His body is in a hospital bed, comatose, and he's basically been reduced to an inner monologue, and a grouchy one at that. The guy is a cynical misanthrope, and he's trapped in limbo between life and death, and he has the opportunity to witness all of human behavior in its entirety. He can read people's minds. He can go anywhere on Earth and see anything he wants. And with his supernatural post-mortem sight, he is able to witness these scenes of human suffering. And also he sees this mysterious female entity whom he has named Mercy, who appears to people in their darkest hour when they're suffering all kinds of horrible suffering from both without and within their own souls. And this Mercy woman comes to them and kind of guides them through it and gives them new life and new hope. And he witnesses these different scenarios in which Mercy intervenes. There's a family, all of whom are they're coming under the influence of this malignant spirit that's pricking them on to doing violence to one another. Like the teenage daughter is about to murder her parents, and elsewhere in the Brazilian rainforest, there's a young native boy whose own people are apparently planning to immolate him. And then there's an older woman in New York who's lost all of her loved ones, and she is haunted by the memories of them. And possibly they're just memories, possibly they're literal ghosts. And Mercy, the whole thing's non-linear, and our ghost narrator keeps jumping between these different people Mercy is trying to help, and witnesses as Mercy does what she does to help all of them one by one. And then slowly he realizes that he is yet another one of Mercy's beneficiaries, that she is showing him what she can do to help all these other people through their private traumas and conquering their inner demons. And so slowly he comes around and he finds that he's been saved, and this guy's small heart threw 3 sizes that day, and he comes back to his body and he awakes to his wife. And it's beautifully painted, and it's just the kind of wool-gathering psycho-spiritual odyssey that Matteis has at times when he takes time off from writing superhero stuff he loves to tell. I mean, if I hadn't known that this was DeMatteis, I would have been able to guess, because it's very much his style.
Yeah, and it feels like, in 1993, when all you really had with stories like this were maybe from independent publishers. Certainly Slice of Life was sort of Love and Rockets bag, for the longest time, mixed with the approach that Dave McKean did for like Arkham Asylum, like it was not as prevalent as we've probably read a bunch of stories like this, to some degree. Tom King is not that far off with dealing with sort of, this kind of stuff. But anyway, I was just surprised that I had to look up. I was like, James DeMatteis was only in his 40s, if maybe 40, when he wrote this. I was like, dude, it's not like you're on your deathbed, like thinking of these questions, but yet he's thinking about that kind of stuff. So it's wordy. It is, it's wordy.
Yeah, there's no dialogue. The whole thing is just the one first person account.
Yeah.
Rambling on and in nonlinear. It's almost like there's something that DeMatteis dreamed, because it kind of feels like something you'd write in your dream journal after you wake up.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like Karen walked around the offices and went, "Has anybody got anything weird? We're launching this imprint. It's going to be some weird stuff." And JM, what do you got that's weird? And he's like, "Oh, I got something weird." And then he just like pulled it out of the bottom drawer that would never get published if it wasn't for Vertigo. And he just like, "Here's the weirdest thing I could think of." And then she was like, "Great."
That could very well have been.
Honestly, I don't think it was even as weird as like Kid Eternity and Enigma. I think they were both weirder than this, to be honest.
Yeah, and some of it was, I think it's the way Kid Eternity and Enigma, the way they jump from scene to scene, like they're not as crisp as like superhero comics, so that took some getting used to. To your point about stuff like in a drawer somewhere. This is what I learned about this because of Mercy. So I'm thankful for that.
It was originally planned for a different imprint, right?
For a Disney imprint. So Disney was getting into comics, and they wanted something a little more mature, like their Touchstone Pictures.
Uh-huh.
It was called Touchmark Comics. It was announced in 1991 in San Diego, and it was spearheaded by Art Young, who was like an assistant editor under Karen Berger during the pre-Vertigo years with those comics, and then they hired him. And he's the one who was developing, because he had he had his Rolodex. That's where you get Mercy. That's where you get Enigma and Grant Morrison, Sebastian Zero, and some other projects were going to be launched with this company. And then it never came about because apparently there was some DC, thing in the early 90s. So these were just sitting around. And when it came time to announce Vertigo, Karen had her side of things. And then they rehired Art Young, and he was like, well, I got these. And that's how they got mixed into the line. Yeah, I never knew that before. That was great. So it's kind of fun to know that history.
Sure.
Touchmark Comics.
I liked it. I liked Enigma. I bought that off the shelf, and I bought all 8 issues as they came out. And yeah, it's weird, and that's not normally my thing, but it had enough of I guess it was the right kind of weird for me that made me want to keep reading. And then I think the story, if I recall, it like maybe starts to make more sense as the issues unfold, and it's a little less weird,
Right, because we're reading the first issues.
And I was 19 when it came out, and I'm working at the comic book store, and you got to be hip, and you're 19, you want to be counterculture, so you want to read all the weird Vertigo shit and deal with it. But so it made sense at the time,
Yeah.
Plus, it's Peter Milligan, right? So you were already reading,
and I was predisposed. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You were reading Shade at the time. Yeah, which that was up to like issue 30 something by that point. So
yeah, although I only really started reading Shade maybe just a little bit before, the Vertigo launch, because the Vertigo really put those things into your sights, right? Before that, they were just kind of hanging out on the shelf,
right?
Because like I didn't read Sandman until Vertigo.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, but yet I definitely bought Death, A High Cost of Living. I still have those issues upstairs. I don't know which came first. Like I don't know what order I read stuff in, but I had, if I was reading Sandman before, maybe I feel like maybe Dave Harold got me onto Sandman and Shade before Vertigo launched, but maybe by only like 4 or 5 months.
So real quick, Enigma is a postmodern tale of self-discovery and sexual identity told against the backdrop of superheroes and villains. Michael Smith lives a meaningless life of routine and boredom. But when Enigma, none of this is in the first issue, but when Enigma, his favorite childhood comic book hero, comes to life, he finds himself on an obsessive crusade to uncover the secret behind his existence. So none of that is in the first issue. I mean, you get hints of it here and there.
Yeah. Well, Michael Smith is in the first issue, and his meaningless life is on display there. But most of the rest of what you said is not revealed yet.
Yeah, you get hints of sort of like not only his boredom, but is he sort of in this relationship? But how much is he really in this relationship with this woman? And does that mean something about what you find out about him later? So Duncan Fegredo artwork. Who I always liked his style. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and this is
obviously a little more rough. I think he progressed a hell of a lot in just a couple years.
Yeah,
and like you said, if this was maybe in the drawer for 2 years from before, so it was probably a little older. And I feel like I knew his name when these issues came out, and so I didn't look up to see like what else he had. What had he already released anything that
prior to this was Kid Eternity with Grant Morrison? The three issues that predate the series, and then it was this. And then after you got
maybe this is when I learned to like him.
Yeah, Millennium Fever and Girl and a whole bunch of other stuff after that. Yeah, this was as a first issue. I was like, okay. the danger of reading all these is now I want to finish them, especially Enigma. It's like, oh, now I got to finish them. Because that one you just barely saw Enigma.
Yeah.
And then when I found out it's a sort of about superheroes and comics, but not really. And Enigma's mask design is cool, looks very theatrical, like Phantom of the Opera. The whole thing of it. I was like, oh yeah, I'll read this. And Dark Horse put out a definitive edition in 2021. So if anybody wants a good version of this with a whole bunch of extras.
I liked it well enough. I will say I got to the end and I'm like, oh, that's it. No, I wanted more. I was ready for more. I was ready to keep going. And, that's the end of the issue. Crap.
They're not beholden to the superhero style of doing comics, right? They just ended like where they ended it. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Scenes from next. What? Wait, that's not the. Oh.
Which one next? Kid Eternity? You want to talk about that?
It was weird.
Yeah.
That too.
Ann Nesenti, Sean Phillips, certainly an artist.
Yeah, right.
Right. Spun off the 3-issue miniseries, but from what I read, it really became its own thing. How would you describe this one, Adam?
Well,
in 10 sentences or less.
Well, it doesn't help that it seems to be just jumping right into whatever Kid Eternity and Mr. Keeper's status quo was at the end of that Grant Morrison and Duncan Fegredo miniseries was. It doesn't give the reader much in the way of recap. It's just we're supposed to know who this guy is, what his motivations are. And he's got a kind of a supporting cast already in place, which are not introduced to people who are reading the first issue of this ongoing series without having read the miniseries first. So I think it would probably be a little difficult to follow even if you had read the miniseries, but it's even worse if you haven't. And it's extremely disjointed. There's a lot going on, a lot of ideas being thrown into the blender here by Nocenti, for which she should be applauded, but it doesn't add up to a very satisfying story because there's some gaps missing in its DNA sequencing, you might say.
Yeah, because he's tasked with creating a special baby, or if not a whole special group. Some of it feels biblical, some of it feels God, whatever.
Or if not with creating them, at least identifying when and where they're going to be created and helping them along.
Right, by using his power to drum up an old psychic to find parents of these babies. And then so that's going on. And then there's a whole notion that he's supposed to elevate humanity for some reason and in some way. There's even some environmental stuff going on in it. And yet, what is he? Is he just a crackpot? Is Kid Eternity just, he's waking up Greek gods, which I thought that actually was cool, where he's like, let me call Cupid.
And it doesn't work, but then it turns out he's opened up a whole can of worms by awakening a whole comatose pantheon.
Right. Who've been asleep because nobody worships them. So that was interesting. That was an interesting part. Yeah, and hijinks ensue, like from there, it's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, one of the other things that we read for this actually gave me a little bit of insight into Kid Eternity. Let me just, I'm opening up Death, The High Cost of Living, #1 here. One of these scenes here where one of the protagonists of that story, Sexton Furnival, is standing in a dump, and here is a black velvet painting. There's like a Coke can in the foreground. And it leads me to wonder, is that a picture of Andy Warhol? Or is that a picture of Kid Eternity? Because they have similar taste in eyewear, apparently. Yeah, like the Morrison Fegredo version of Kid Eternity has these flip-top shades. And then it occurred to me, there is something Warholian about this take on Kid Eternity. Like where Warhol's bag as a pop artist was to recycle and repurpose different images from popular culture and turn them into pop art. Kid Eternity recycles and repurposes entire people. Like he just dredges up figures from history and mythology and repurposes them for whatever grand, factory-style project he's putting in place. Whatever the forces of eternity, whom he supposedly serves, has him doing here. So he's just he's making a pop mosaic out of all these different characters he's resurrecting and putting into his service. So yeah, he's like a pop art guru messiah kind of guy.
That was so Murdonian. It was amazing.
Love
Wow.
My God.
Love it.
I'm here to help. Yeah. So yeah, that gave me a little bit of insight into what was going on in the first issue of Kid Eternity, but only a little bit of insight.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
I've always liked that power set. You know, those of you listening don't know, Kid Eternity is actually a Golden Age character. He first appeared back in 1942, and he was a Quality Comics character. And his bag was he was killed by a German U-boat when he was out fishing with his grandfather, and that happened 75 years before he was supposed to die. So it was kind of a consolation prize. Heaven sends down this angelic figure, Mr. Keeper, to be his guide and conscience and like Jiminy Cricket helper. And he's given the power to summon, the spirits of the dead or of mythological figures by saying the word eternity. And he used these powers to like fight Nazis and criminals and whatnot. It was a long running feature back in the 40s. But then, Morrison got his hands on him, and his motives became a little more difficult to construe.
He wrapped him up into the whole Lords of Chaos and Lords of Order stuff.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't that? Yeah,
See,
I think that was Morrison.
Yeah, I haven't read that miniseries yet. Actually, when that was what I thought we were going to be reading for this. When you said Kid Eternity #1, I was thinking of the miniseries. So it's a good thing that you sent along the PDF, Peter, because I do not at all own any issues of the Ann Nocenti Vertigo series.
And this character got roped up eventually when he got over to DC into the Shazam family.
Oh, yeah, that was E. Nelson Bridwell who did that.
Yeah.
It was like back in the late 70s, early 80s during the backup run in World's Finest.
Yeah,
he loved that character, even though he was published by a completely different publisher than published the Shazam comics. But he just decided, hey, I like Kid Eternity. He was created by Otto Binder, who also wrote like hundreds of Captain Marvel family stories for Fawcett. These characters should get together. So E. Nelson Bridwell, who wrote the Shazam backup, decided, Kid Eternity was going to be the long lost brother of Captain Marvel, Captain Marvel Jr., Freddie Freeman. So yeah, but then all that was pretty much forgotten, and Morrison came along, and it turns out that I think it was established in the miniseries that instead of out fishing with his grandfather, Kid Eternity was just out with some boy-hungry pedophile who picked him up, like at a port someplace.
That sounds like something Morrison would write.
Yeah, especially like 1989 Morrison. It's just
Yeah.
a much less innocent take, certainly. So, yep, that's like I've always liked Kid Eternity. Like Bridwell, I thought the character had potential, but then I'm a little bit curious after reading this first issue as to what Nocenti ultimately did with the Kid Eternity, Mr. Keeper, and so forth. But there's just it's also jumbled here in this first issue. It's kind of an impediment to my desire to read further.
Yeah, it doesn't make me want to read the Ann Nocenti Daredevil stuff that everybody raves about, because I've read Longshot and I was like, it's okay. I read this and now I'm like, ooh, was she better as an editor for Claremont? And I don't know,
Does everybody really rave about her? I mean, I know some people do, but I think they're kind of like...
There are a lot of big fans of that. Maybe it's more because of John Romita, but I
think it's John Romita and Lee Weeks that make that run.
Maybe
why I remember caring about it, right?
Okay.
But I always go for the art over the story anyway, so I'm a bad. Don't ask me.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there was a time when the Nocenti run on Daredevil was widely dumped on. So I think there's maybe just a backlash against that now. Let's say, be fair, give it a try. And, as Brian said, the artwork probably has something to do with that.
And it is cool to see like early Sean Phillips, just working things out on the page and having to deal with a script like this. I can imagine why it's why it was the way it is. So,
Shane, you flickered and turned green for a minute.
It's not easy being green.
That's why we're doing a Vertigo segment. So, any other thoughts on Kid Eternity? We good on that? Should we go? Can we go to Death next?
Yeah,
sure.
The launch, Death, the Highest Cost of Living, was the first comic out with the Vertigo banner, official comic. Chris Bacalo, Mark Buckingham on inks, Neil Gaiman, one of 3.
Awesome.
Where she spends a day on Earth in human form.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one the most out of them all. I read Sandman Mystery Theater years ago, so I wasn't necessarily going to. I was saving that one for last in case I got to it, but again, the night got screwed up. But this is my favorite one. I really enjoyed this.
It's so easy to look at. It's so easy to read, right? When it's, even though it's still clearly Vertigo, and but it's got less of the experimental nature and more of just like this is we're telling a story, an adventure story with death.
Right. A lot less wonkiness and a lot more just character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still wordy. You still have to read it. Like, I thought as a 16-year-old kid, I was like, wow, does he have he has words, man. Jeez. Which, I guess teenagers, I remember I used to write a lot in my journal too, but
sure.
That was interesting.
I even like the patience to introduce death in the series, in the issue. It was what, halfway through until you saw her?
Sandman? Oh no, in the issue.
No,
in
the issue.
Right. Yeah. Because you don't know what the setup is, right? Because she's been in the Sandman series off and on, and you just assume when he's standing in a garbage dump and a refrigerator falls on him that he's dead, right? Like, I don't know. Is this a Sixth Sense thing? I don't remember the last issue. And then here comes death.
I saw a thing in here. I love this book. This is by far my favorite. Probably my favorite Vertigo series. These 3 issues are just really stick in my brain. And I'm a sucker for Chris Bachalo. And then Mark Buckingham, this is when Buckingham was inking Bachalo, and then you see Buckingham's artwork on his own. You see all these elements of Bachalo, especially in his faces and stuff, and they're still there in Fables today. And I love the synergy that those 2 guys have. But there is a funny picture when they're in Death's apartment, and he looks at the picture of her family. Mm-hmm. The father looks just like the guy from The Office.
Kevin?
Kevin? He looks exactly like Kevin from The Office. Look at that picture right now and tell me that's not Kevin from The Office.
He does.
Isn't that insane?
I'm not gonna be able to not see that now.
I was like, wait, did they take that? No, this happened like 20 years before The Office. Oh my God, what?
See, and I thought you were going to go, when they're in the apartment and they showed this picture of death, how beautifully crafted that is. And you're like, yeah, it looks like Kevin from The Office. Like, totally threw me off. What I thought you were going for.
This was a really great, I think this was a really great period in Bachalo's artwork where he had refined himself from the early Shade issues where he was super rough and just learning the craft. But before he became like the super honed person that he is today, there was still some rawness to it, but it was still obviously very good and full of character and uniqueness in his art style. So that's part of what I love about this.
Especially like page 23, you said about how there's something to their faces that they're drawn. Page gosh, I just lost it. Page 23, at least on the app, is I love all the facial expressions that you get from all the characters on that page. Just absolutely gorgeous.
For someone who is a mix of sort of cartooning and semi-realism, he's obviously not totally in. He does do facial expressions well, surprisingly. In they're almost shorthand a lot of times, and it's certainly not Kevin Maguire level, but it's like he at least is paying attention to.
It's a little bit Kevin Maguire and Terry Moore. I felt reading.
Yeah, and he's just only he's not far away. He's like a year away from Generation X, which is really where I got to know him from. And I loved Generation X. That was so great. Yeah. And it was great because of his artwork,
Well, his portrayal of death is so the only way I see that character. The only way. And lots of people drew her throughout the Sandman run, right? But I if you say the character, Chris Bocello's version pops in my head. It's like a little disconcerting watching the TV show. It's not because they cast a woman of color. It's not anything like that. It's just not Chris Bocello's. Like she is so cemented in my brain as this particular version from these 3 issues and the other 3 issues that the second one, that I just can't see her any other way. And it's like, I think that says a lot. It's a testament to, well, again, I was 19 years old. You know, it was like the whole thing. Like I was into I loved punk music, and I liked like these comics felt punky and like it's like, so yeah, his style just works.
This is more my kind of Vertigo. When I think back on Vertigo, I think of, even though I got into the Sandman way late, the one that I really adored was Books of Magic, and it's very similar to how Sandman is presented, with a large cast of characters, and some of those characters get spun off into miniseries. So like Mad Hetty is just, everything about the supporting cast in this book just makes me think of Books of Magic and how that was written and drawn. And so early Vertigo for me, it's sort of like those series until I got to later things, you know. So this is, I think I read this one as well, I think in a trade when it came out.
So there was an interesting thing when issue 3 of High Cost of Living came out. It was out for a couple of days or something, and then they pulled it. We had to pull it from the shelf, and then they shipped it again like next week. It was some printing change. I don't remember why that was done, but I have both the original and the reprint, the thing that came out like the following week.
Nice.
And I don't know that it's worth any money or anything. It's just that it was an interesting trivia tidbit footnote that I remember. Yeah, I don't.
That's cool.
Apparently pages 19 and 20 in the first print were not facing each other, which led to a corrected.
I wish I had hoped that would make that issue, you know, worth $500, but to the best of my knowledge, that hasn't happened.
By the way, the miniseries shared the Comics Buyer's Guide Fan Award for favorite limited comic book series, along with Frank Miller's Daredevil: The Man Without Fear. And both Neil Gaiman and Karen Berger received Eisner Awards as Best Writer and Best Editor.
Nice.
When did Children's Crusade issue 1 come out? How long after this was that?
I'll tell you in a second. It came out in, not much longer, October of 1993. And this is January of 93.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love
because that first and last issue of that were Chris Bocello, and in the middle issues were somebody else. I don't remember, but those were great. But also a cool story too. Yeah.
Vertigo's crossover event without without quite doing it the superhero way. So
much of this was denied me at the time because I was shopping at Pagoda Comics, and the people in charge over there were pretty strict about allowing minors to purchase suggested for mature readers comics. So I kind of had to hunt down certain Vertigo things after the fact, including the Death miniseries. I had to find that at a flea market. I bought the single issues maybe 2 or 3 years after it first came out, and I read it at the time, and this is the first time I've come back to it since. I really did not remember as much of it as I thought I would. It just kind of passed from me like a dream.
Well, speaking of, that's a good segue. Sandman Mystery Theatre, #1. This will wrap us up here. Matt Wagner, Guy Davis. By the way, John Costanza was letterer on 3 of these. Todd Klein was letterer on 2 of them, so that's pretty cool. And Matt Wagner and Ann Nesenti are the only American writers. All the rest were British. Sandman Mystery Theatre #1. So this is the first time I've ever read this.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I had a trade. I have the trade of this, and I read it in that.
Yeah.
I bought that one off the shelf too.
Nice. Adam Shaw. I read later stories. There was one that he did with the Hour Man. I think it was like a 4-issue Hour Man arc. I read that.
There was one of those. I think the Crimson Avenger was in there at some point.
Oh, I got to read that. I thought this was fan-effing-tastic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's my number one of these 5, too.
Same with me. The artwork, the story, that first page alone, I wrote in my notes, I said, that first page alone, I could have just read that and I would have been like, this is the greatest thing. This is the best one out of 5. Like, I was so, I mean, it's so interesting that this is Matt Wagner, like it's so different from Mage. It's just so good. And such, the Guy Davis artwork, like these characters are both beautiful and ugly at the same time, and like they just feel like they're from another world, of course, because it's, the 1938 or 39, 38. I think it's 38.
It is 38.
Yeah, it's supposed to precede his actual first appearance in terms of the year, but and just the idea that they can do this with a DC character, but within the Vertigo universe, right? So if we're celebrating 30 years of Vertigo, like what an interesting concept to take a Golden Age DC character that they were not using at the time.
No.
Right, because the whole Justice Society was in limbo at the time, post-crisis.
Yep.
And just say, F it, let's do a story way back, and just, I was so, and these they're so realized, like, is it Diane? How do you say her name?
I'd say Diane.
Diane, yeah. Like, she's just such a cool character right from the beginning. And I've always liked that the 20s and 30s are such an interesting part of American history in terms of, the privileged, I'll say. The last page reveal, so just great. I love this one.
Well, and when I read this, I had no idea who Wesley Dodds was. Because I never read any Justice Society or anything. I mean, basically Superman and Batman were the extent of my, DC knowledge, right? Like, obviously that's not quite true, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I never knew. So when I got to read JSA and like in the late 90s or 2000, it was like, oh, that's it. Oh, how about that?
Or when he shows up in Starman before that, because he's
yeah, that's true. Right.
Yeah. Why did you like this one, Adam? You said you.
Well, let me tell you, the first time I read this was maybe 8 years ago. The trade I have here, I've noticed the sticker on the cover. I bought this from Chris at one of his Wild Pig sales. And I bought it on a bus ride, like on an NJ Transit bus, back from the New York Comic-Con that year. It just seemed like it was like a darkened bus, like I had the overhead reading light on. It seemed like the right surroundings, right atmosphere to experience a store like this. And I was right and I was wrong. I mean, it was the right setting, but I was so like emotionally drained and overstimulated from having been at the con for like a couple of days that it came off to me as kind of drab, but reading it again just a couple of days ago, I think it hit me from the right angle. And yeah, you mentioned that first page, Peter. You're right, that is a beautiful piece of storytelling just in and of itself. Just frame it on the wall and just let that be its own story. But it also functions beautifully as a great segue from like the storytelling style of Gaiman and his collaborators in Sandman. It's like this is the dream that has possessed poor Wesley Dodds, and then he wakes up from it as much as he ever does, and we segue into like the world of 1938 New York, where this whole thing is set. And it's just it's just loaded with period atmosphere. It reflects both the popular culture and the actual, the literal lived zeitgeist of the late 30s. Parts of it just feel very much like they were lifted right from a film noir of the time. Talking about Diane Belmont and the relationship she eventually develops with Wes Dodds. It's a little bit like a William Ballard and Myrna Loy, Nick and Nora Charles dynamic, except darker and spookier. And just little storytelling techniques here and there, like when Wes and Diane are at that party and Joe DiMaggio is introduced, again, just a figure from the period. And Diane looks over Wesley's shoulder and he's scribbling in his notebook. It's just like a close-up from an old 30s movie where you see what a character is writing. And then he's writing a little poem in his notebook, which is not only like I said, typical of like filmic storytelling of the period. It's also a good nod to the way the Sandman character worked in the Golden Age stories, because he would leave little poems at the scenes of the crimes that he's stopped. I think his favorite one, something like, "There is no land beyond the law where tyrants rule with unshakable power. It's but a dream from which the wicked wake to face their fate, their terrifying hour." And he's not a great poet.
Did you know that by memory?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And the poem he's writing at that party isn't that great either, so it's in character. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the pull quote from Neil Gaiman on the cover of this trade that I have here. It says, "A remarkable examination and evisceration of American pulp tradition." And there's a ton of pulpiness in this first issue and in the issues that follow. But, I think I'd vary with Mr. Gaiman on one point. I think it's not so much an evisceration. I mean, it's not like it's tearing the guts out of classic American pulp storytelling. I think it's more of an invisceration. It's like it's actually taking the form and feel of old pulp fiction and stuffing extra internal organs into it, like giving it more substance, more functionality. Whereas the old pulp story, it was pretty much just pure catharsis, those old pulp stories. Just like sensationalism and just escapist entertainment to a certain point. It reflected the world conditions of the time, but this takes it a step further, and it actually addresses them full on. We get stuff. We mentioned prohibition. We get I'm sure there's plenty going to be about the rise of fascism in Europe eventually. We've got
class, gender,
race, another big one.
Oh yeah, race.
Later on in this first trade, and we get racism is kind of right out there. So yeah, it's taking pulp conventions and taking this, this classic masked vigilante character from DC's Golden Age and fleshing it out and adding just like the color and texture of the period in very, very satisfying ways. I remember thinking the first time I read this on that bus ride back to New York that part of the reason it was drab was because of the color palette. And I'm trying to find the name of the colorist here.
David Hornan.
There we go. Thank you, Peter. And it's a lot of tans and beiges and ecru's and grays, and which is a little bit boring, and maybe the poor lighting on the bus wasn't really helping my apprehension of what it looked like, but it's kind of suitable to the period when you think about it. And besides which, it's all these beiges and ecru's and such. It's like the color tones of sand, appropriately enough.
Yeah.
Boy, we should have been around when Vertigo was dropping. We would tore those books up.
Yeah. If you know what Wesley Dodds was like in the Golden Age, this is even better for you. But even if you don't, it's gripping. It's great. Just pre-World War II American storytelling. It's the gritty underbelly of life in New York City for people of a variety of walks of life.
Yeah, I even wrote down. I was like, clearly there's elements of this I feel that Wagner is inspired by, like Rorschach even, like there's a hint of that, maybe it's because he's in a trench coat, he has the mask thing, like you can see elements of that. You can just see he's an everyman. He's not a Clark Kent, he's not a Bruce Wayne. He's a Dan Dreiber, it's just a regular dude.
And everything that makes up his costume is real.
Yeah.
Obtainable.
Right.
Yep,
to the point.
I don't know if that's a step up or down the evolutionary ladder from the costume he wore in his actual first comics appearance in the 40s when he was wearing this weird blue and yellow thing on his face.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just a real World War I issue gas mask he's wearing here.
Which makes it spookier.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Exactly,
absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking that when the first time I read this issue it's just fun to go back and learn more about a JSA character.
Right.
Because we didn't get a lot of this stuff from them. And then JSA came out and explored more of that in various ways. But this was really interesting. And like you said, Peter, totally separate for taking an established DC hero and doing something like this with it was really something back then.
Sandman Mystery Theatre, DC Elseworlds TV show.
Yeah.
outside of continuity, that'd be amazing. Be great.
Yeah, honor.
You know what just occurred to me, and what's insane is when we started the podcast, Vertigo Comics were only 12 years old. We have been doing the show longer than the distance between the start of Vertigo to the start of the podcast, between the start of the podcast and now. Isn't like that's completely mental?
Yep.
Wait, I wasn't going to do this because we're running late. And if anybody wants to wrap up the Vertigo talk, we can. But I did pull some February CGS history. February 20th of 2006, episode 108 was our first story time with Uncle Sal. He had been on the show before, but only because he was
for the interview.
The interview. And he did his first. So episode 108. February 24th through the 26th, 2006 was the very first New York Comic Con.
So that's when I had that poster sign that's hanging up over here with the Justice League by Giffen, DeMatteis, and McGuire. Was the first time I met all three of them.
Where they underestimated just how many people were going to show up to that thing?
Yeah, I didn't leave that floor for nothing.
I had to.
February 29th, 2008, episode 384, the Book of the Month Club on DMZ. That was a hot one.
Epic.
Yeah.
February 3rd, 2010, episode 779, we talked to Jeff Johns about Smallville Absolute Justice, which was a pretty big thing for us back then.
Yeah.
Heck yes.
And February 25th through 26th, 2012, the very first London Super Comic Con.
Wow.
Already 11 years ago. Holy crap.
Peter, stop making us feel old.
Come on, these are fun.
It's great. I just can't. Time is so weird.
Yeah.
That means we've not been doing the London Con longer than we were doing, because we did it 5 times. So now that means we haven't been doing it for 6 years. Like, what in the hell?
Crazy.
It doesn't seem possible.
Crazy. Wow. Any wrap up on Sandman or Vertigo?
It's interesting.
Was it fun to do? Yeah, was it fun to do that? Like we were like, let's read it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because back then when Vertigo first came out, I had absolutely no interest whatsoever in most of it. Like Sandman, I read years and years later. Some of the stuff that I read was the first time I read it. Some of it was the first time I ever heard of it, just because I wasn't interested back then. So yeah, it was totally interesting.
Yeah. I'd been reading comic books for less than a year in January 1993.
Wow.
So it wasn't exactly on my radar either, Shane. But in hindsight, they did put out some pretty good books.
Yeah.
It's cool to do what we've done here.
Yeah.
It was one of your typically good producers' ideas here, Peter, to do this.
Oh no, I think that was Brian's idea. Or we
my idea?
Yeah, because we were just going to talk generally, and you were like, we should read. We should actually read. And then I was like, okay, well then let's read the first issues of
All right, take full credit then. Thank you.
Right.
Well, then I take full credit.
Hail to the founder.
So for those of you who are like, oh shit, we got to read these things. That was Brian.
I said no shits. This was
at the time, like from my perspective, right? Like that's a very memorable time in comics for me. Like it's like because I bought lot of the Vertigo stuff. I didn't buy all of it, obviously. I bought stuff based on what caught my eye. I can't tell you why or why not. Right? A few of them, obviously I knew about Death from reading some Sandman, so it was like I gotta buy that. But why did I buy Enigma? I don't know, but I did, and I bought all 8 of them, and I liked it. That's all I remember, right? But it was again. I just think it lined up so perfectly with that time of my life and the college and the counterculture and all that stuff, and it just made sense at the time. And not that I was above reading superheroes, not at all. I read tons of it, but this just felt like right. Like, oh my god, this is coming out now. I have to be part of this, otherwise I'm not being true to myself if I don't read these comics. It was something like that. Like part of my identity was based around the fact that comics were not just about superheroes anymore. They always hadn't been, but really this was the first big push that said it's okay to have bizarre comics published by one of the 2 biggest comic publishers. This wasn't independent stuff anymore. This was DC. So
you figure
felt different.
Epic Comics in the 80s probably just suffered because of distribution more than anything. Like, they certainly were of quality too, and there were some interesting things, but were they as widespread? This was DC saying, here is our dedicated line, and we've already got all these successes, and now we're going to give you more. And I'm going to make a bold statement. I think our age group getting into comics when we were at the right age for everything that happened. We were at the right age for Crisis. We were at the right age for Image. We were at the right age for Vertigo. Then we were at the right age for Sandman. Then we were at the right age for, late 80s, late night Marvel Knights and Civil War. And now we're suffering because we're old shits. But back, I think we were, we were the prime target audience for the longest time.
Yeah, we had enough history from reading what we did before to enjoy and carry through a knowledge of all of that time that I don't think anybody since then has had in the same way.
Yeah. I mean, what period has had that many changes? I'm sure somebody's now, I was there with Fantastic Four #1, Okay,
well, sure. Right. Well, you talk about the marketing on this, and I was just looking at eBay to see if these issues were worth anything, the death stuff, and they're worth nothing. Mm-hmm. But a couple people have lots where it's the 3 issues of Death and also the Vertigo preview #1.
Oh.
There was an issue that they actually gave out for free, and it had a couple pages of a bunch of these different. It had Sandman, it had Death, it had Enigma, and it had it had Sandman Mystery Theatre, Sandman, Enigma, and Death: The High Cost of Living. Oh, it was 75 cents. It looks on the cover. You had to buy. I feel like Lem gave it away, though. I mean, that sounds like a Lem thing to do. Here, buy. But that was an actual comic book that you walked away with that had samples of 4 other actual comic books. And so, that built a hype. You wanted that. It was new and interesting,
Yeah. I mean, Vertigo really is the imprint built on the back of Karen Berger, Alan Moore, and Neil Gaiman, and other ones I know, but that Alan Moore Swamp Thing run, we would not have had Vertigo without that, so at least not in that way. So, it was smart. It was a smart thing.
I'm sorry that Vertigo had to close up.
There's plenty to read though.
Oh yeah.
God, if you're a comic book fan and you haven't dipped into Vertigo, my God, you got tons of reading. So,
Clara's going to be doing some of her homework now and reading some important comics. Shane, you missed it. Clara's got a job at Showcase Comics.
Nice. Oh, lucky.
So now she's going to start she's like, all right, tell me what I need to read. And
that's
I'm like,
awesome.
Okay.
Write up a curriculum for her.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. So luckily she's a very fast reader, so she will plow through stuff in no time. And so Sandman is on her list. She loves Neil Gaiman. She's read a lot of his books. And so she's been wanting to read Sandman for a while, but now it's like a requirement.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations to her. Wow. Bryan, I wanted to ask you, did you take notice of the big Star Wars action figure auction that just went off the last week or so? Somebody found all kinds of vintage Kenner carded in really good shape figures. And one of the double telescoping Luke Skywalker carded 12 backs went for $24,000 or something like that in an auction.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. It's neat. Look it up and read a couple articles about it. It's interesting to see what those figures went for. Estimated $800 to $1,000, and it went for $5,000 or $6,000 or something. They had a lot of neat stuff, and I didn't get to look at all of it, but I know a little bit about what had happened.
It's crazy when you read about all these hoarders and all this stuff and random storage units that just were abandoned for decades, and then it's they're going to find more of these.
Yeah.
Maybe not as big, maybe not as pristine or whatever, but over the rest of our lives, every once in a while, somebody's grandfather will die, and then somebody will slog through piles and piles of shit and find unopened Snake Eyes toys, and it'll be like, holy cow,
I want to look it up. There's one of the lots was a Kenner case of Empire Strikes Back Yodas, whole case, just Yodas. I can't imagine
stuff.
Yeah. But it's just interesting. The prices just blew me away. What they went for.
I sometimes I have moments of like, oh, I can't believe I got rid of whatever original figures I had. Like, not that I care about the money, just that like I had it. It's so cool. I want to look at it again or whatever. But I try to detach and be like, it doesn't matter if I have it or not. But I have a book. There was I don't know, 15 years ago or 20 years ago or something, somebody printed it's like a nice oversized, it's paperback, but it's full color, beautiful photos of like every Star Wars toy that had come out, like all the original stuff.
Yeah.
And so like I can just look through and look at the spaceships, look at the figures, look at the gun, like all the stuff. It's like, and it's a really nice book and it takes up very little space on my shelf.
Yeah.
If I want to go through and be reminiscent, I can go pull it off and think, oh yeah, that's what Greedo looked like. Okay.
I know I had all whatever like 96 original ones that there were. And I think I have about 40 left. I've sold some over the years, but I've kept the original like 12 Star Wars ones that were mine, and the expanded did look like 21 or whatever it was for the Star Wars movie. I have all of those. And then I have some just random ones up through Empire and Jedi, but not many. The only thing I really want to ever do with vintage Star Wars toys is, and I've said it before, is rebuild my Death Star playset. I have a couple pieces of it. I want to piece that together, put the figures on it, and that's it. I don't need to get the Millennium Falcon again and X-Wings and type. I don't want all of that. I just want someday to get the playset together and put some figures on it and be done with it.
Yeah.
But I think I have, if I don't have that book you're talking about, I have one very similar, and I will page through that every now and then. And it's a lot of fun to look at all that production quality pictures of all the toys.
It looks like there's some new books out now they include some of the newer figures, and this is just like the
Kenner.
vintage stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
All right. Don't some of you have to work tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I'm normally in bed by now.
I know.
I can't say that. I'm usually up till midnight, but yeah, I do have to work.
Okay.
Midnight's an early night for me.
Oh, wow.
I usually go to bed about midnight, get up at 5:30 or 6.
Christmas Barn doesn't open till 11 at this time of year.
Nice.
Oh. Plenty of reading time.
Yeah.
Yeah. In theory, yeah.